Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everybody. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Tanya.
And looks like we may be moderator less. Oh, no, there's Jester right there. Thank you, Jester. Because I want to use your happy little lower thirds animation that we made for you. So welcome to committee live stream in the middle of the week, in the middle of the summer.
In the summer, yeah. Summer's winding down. It was so cold in Hamilton today, and then it started raining.
Climate change, though, right? So when it's hot, it's climate change, and when it's not, we don't talk about climate change. I guess that's the way it is. Anyhow, so this should be an interesting one. This is as a result of the Conservatives really pushing for some oversight into the $9 million purchase of a residence on Billionaire Row in New York City for the consul for Justin Trudeau's buddy. And this is going to be the first of a number of meetings. Another one is tomorrow as well. But they are meeting with a couple of folks today. The first person they're going to be meeting is Mark Quinlan, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Real Property Services, Linda Jenkin, who is the Director General for Real Estate and National Capital Area Investment Management, Real Property Services, and Amelie Bouchard, Acting Chief Appraiser of Canada, Real Property Services. And we have Samantha Tattersall, who is the Assistant Comptroller General, Acquired Services and Assets Sector, the Office of the Comptroller General for Treasury Board Secretariat. You can't buy anything in the government without the involvement of Treasury Board Secretariat, or TBS, as they commonly call it. So that is what we're going to be looking at tonight. We do have Michael Barrett in the house. We do have Larry Brock in the house. We do have Garnet Jennis not in the house, but he is remote.
Oh, okay, that's good though. He's still there. He's still able to,
and
cause trouble.
Yeah, and MP Julie Vignon is in, and Taylor Backrack is back in from the NDP as well.
He asks some good questions sometimes.
I'll
give him that. He can. When he's not conspiring with the Liberals, he can ask some good questions.
Yeah, and once he lets the NDP ideology run over him, he is...
It's all over, folks.
It's all over. Anyhow, so Tanya will go over the rules for the night.
Yeah, so it is the same house rules as always. And number one, please respect each other and the platform. So don't be name calling, don't be cussing in the chat. Actually, that's its own separate rule. But if you're doing anything that the moderator feels is unwarranted, he's going to ask you to stop. So please help out the moderator. He's not here on a witch hunt. He's here to help keep the chat running smoothly. And number two is no selling, soliciting, or spamming the chat. And number three is don't use profanity. We like to keep things parliamentary in the chat. It helps everybody enjoy it.
As Barnaby is not here tonight, there will be no virtual bar service.
Unfortunately.
The virtual bar is closed. It was... virtual BYO virtual B if you wanted to drink virtually. Anyhow,
I do want to give everybody an update about our dog Sky. I did post yesterday, but just in case you missed it, so we took her home. It was probably just past midnight. I guess it would be technically Monday morning, so after we got off the live stream, and she was okay. And then in the middle of the night, about 2:30 in the morning, she woke us up having another seizure, unfortunately. But we called the emergency clinic, and they said, well, you've already got one epileptic dog. Why don't you give her some of his medication and we'll calculate the dose for you? And so that's what we did. And then she was okay. And knock on wood, she was okay last night. We didn't hear any seizures, and she's been okay all day today. We took her out for a nice walk before it started raining. So she's been quite comfortable for the day.
And I just want to say that was really, really upstanding of the animal hospital that we were interacting with, because well, it was 2:30 in the morning, and they could have easily said, sure, bring her in, and charged us another emergency exam fee. And for any of you pet owners that know, who've had to take your dog after hours to an emergency vet, that is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, or they could have said, "Oh yeah, we have to administer some medication," and given her the exact same
Blood
thing we have at
tests
home.
and all
Yeah,
this stuff.
so they were really, really awesome.
Yeah.
We brought her to her regular vet yesterday afternoon, and she had some blood drawn, and we got the results back today, and everything was normal. So unfortunately, we don't know for sure why she's had the seizures, but hopefully they do not continue.
So fingers crossed.
Yes.
But personally, I think it's going to be fine, and she's going to return back to her unintelligent self. Well, she's already back to that, that's for sure.
Oh, poor Sky.
But
Ryan's always making fun of my dogs.
if anyone wants 2 Shelties, let me know, and
You
you
can't
can
have
have
them, they're
them.
mine.
Anyway, but all good. So we have roughly an hour and 42 minutes of footage, so this should not be a 5-hour Diane Daily live stream. I don't know if there's going to be a lot to pick apart or not. What I did cut off is the last 45 minutes, because that was just banter back and forth about seeing the actual appraisal of the building. So I was able to cut that off, and as well as cut out a couple of breaks that they took. Other than that, I think we're good to go. So let's get to the pre-show admin.
Activity, yeah.
So we have Jilly Beans with a $2 super chat. Ding dong, absolutely.
Yes, please ring the doorbell on your way in.
We are 840 viewers right now, 404 likes. Just a reminder that every like tells YouTube to suggest this stream to somebody else. So please do that. Think of it as a reach button instead of a like button, because that is what YouTube uses in order to suggest this out to everybody else. So please hit that doorbell on the way in, take your shoes off, take a seat in the lazy boy, and enjoy a night of committee. And Annette Modien, welcome to NP supporter. Thank you very much. Goko Donnie with 10 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for that. If you were a recipient of one of those, please give Goko Donnie a thank you. Kristen May, member for 5 months. This channel gives me hope. Thank you for all the hard work you both do. Thank you.
Well,
that
our
is
pleasure.
the number one product that we want, as well as information to Canadians. And Alice Avonlea, member for 10 months. What an ingenious waste of time or money for the benefit of a friend. Glad your doggy is fine again. Thank you so much for that, Alice.
Thank you.
Trish Pruill with a $2.79 super chat. Does Tanya need another adult milkshake?
I have a feeling that Trish does, so make one for me.
There you go.
Let me know how it is.
Sean with a $14 super chat. Can't hang out tonight. Early start in the morning. I'll watch this tomorrow at 3 a.m. on my way in throwing my glasses that I missed it live. Keep up the amazing work, guys. Thank you so much, Sean. Have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you tomorrow, I guess. Heartsinger with a $5 super chat. Hoof-shaped, paw-shaped scars on my heart. Much love and prayers for your babies, humans and animals. And once again, thank you for all you do. Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
that.
It's our pleasure.
And Landon McIntosh, member for 4 months. Love you guys and everything you do. I'll be tuning in later tonight when I have to take a long drive. Is it wrong that I'm excited for committee with you?
It's never wrong to be excited about the OGO committee. There is a all-star conservative cast on that committee.
One of my favorite pre-chat comments ever was like 4 months ago when somebody said, is it weird that I'm more excited for NP committee live stream than I am for a sporting event? and the overwhelming response was, no, it is not wrong. It is actually quite healthy and necessary for the good of Canada. So,
well, and I'll tell you, I think, because I've gotten the comment before, like, oh, you guys treat the politicians like they're celebrities or whatever. And my retort is, honestly, what they're doing is more important to my life than any celebrity. So I'm going to support the ones that I like, that I think are doing a good job. And I'm going to criticize the ones that I think are doing a bad job.
yeah. So, ironically, one of the I would say collateral goals that we've ended up adopting is the MPs that are doing a great job, make them famous. The MPs that are doing a bad job, make them famous.
Make them infamous is the right word.
Because Canadians should know, all Canadians should know the MPs that are doing a great job and the MPs that are doing a terrible job. So, Anita Vandenbelt. Hello. Just me, Nicole, with a $5 super chat. Glad Sky is okay. Got your email, Tanya. I answered back.
Awesome. Thank you. I've been out and about today. So I will check emails probably tomorrow.
Likes are catching up. Thank you, everybody. But we're still 300 behind. So let's kick it into high gear. Dr. Pepper better than Coke. Yes, it is. And
somebody made a comment on the giant can. I get them from Wholesale Club.
And that was Paladin Phil. My apologies. Paladin Phil with a $2 super chat. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody. Let's get to committee. So we're going to have a couple of opening statements and then into the questions. And then we'll see what happens. And I don't believe Ikra Khalid is skulking around. So,
thank goodness.
I cannot say if Parm Baines is not in the house or not, but we'll see. We'll see. So here we go.
We're starting off with 5 minutes from Ms. Tattersall from TBS, and then we will go online to Mr. Quinlan. The floor is yours. Oh, just quickly, an hour and a half in, we will take a short break for the witnesses and the staff to attend to issues. But go ahead, Ms. Tattersall. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And just everybody let me know if the volume is okay on the committee video. The sound guys in Parliament...
we're kind of screwing the pooch today?
Well, they're not the most consistent. Let's just say that. I don't want to slag them too much because sound is the bane of my existence on this podcast. So,
as you all know from this morning's video.
So just let me know if it's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. My name is Samantha Tattersall. I am the Assistant Controller General for the Acquired Services and Assets Sector in the Office of Controller General at the Treasury Board Secretariat. First, I'd like to take a moment to outline the role that Treasury Board Secretariat plays in supporting the management of investments, specifically real property. Le Conseil de Trésor établit le cadre.
The Treasury Board sets the administrative policy framework for the management of investments, including real property, through the Directive on the Management of Real Property. Custodian departments, of which there are 28 across the federal government, including Global Affairs Canada, are responsible for the management of their real property. Deputy heads of these organizations are accountable for ensuring that real property is managed in a manner that enables operational outcomes while demonstrating sound stewardship. Consistent with Treasury Board policy, custodian organizations must have a senior designated official responsible for the management of real property.
I'm just pausing it because it's funny. Jason Craig is saying, is that an AI translator? And it's funny because it certainly almost sounds like an AI translator. But this is the issue with the volume guys, is the translators are always very, very low, but then everybody else is kind of normal volume. So I have turned the video up a bit. I'm hoping all of our eardrums are not going to get blasted when the rest of the, English speakers start speaking. So
I guess we'll find out.
So there we go. But it sounds like a new translator, or at least somebody who has been cycled into committee, because I don't remember hearing her before.
And please hit that like button.
Who is accountable for establishing, implementing, and maintaining a department-wide real property management framework. This framework should include effective governance and oversight mechanisms to effectively enable the management of real property that supports the delivery of their respective departmental mandates.
Transaction, whether that is to lease, to acquire, or dispose of real property, Treasury Board approval is required when the value exceeds a department's transaction limits. All custodian departments have general limits, and 8 have special limits that are reflective of their operational requirements. And this information is available online on canada.ca. In the case of Global Affairs Canada, the department can acquire official residence property outside of Canada for an amount of up to 10 million Canadian. So this means that the property in question was acquired within Global Affairs Canada's authority.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that they were able to acquire this property so they didn't have to go outside of the department to get additional approvals? They still need it from Treasury Board, but they managed to keep it just under that $10 million mark.
How convenient.
How convenient. Okay, a couple of super chats have come in. Let's just blow through those. Just the one. Rick Liard with a $5 super chat. Oh boy, a new month, Visa-wise. Another 20 to spend on the best political news channel. Thank you so much, Rick. All right, back we go.
The Treasury Board did not review the transaction in question. Regardless of whether the transaction is within or above a department's limits, they need to transact in a manner that is consistent with the directive on the management of real property. So this includes validating the need for an acquisition based on their department's programs, is supported by the appropriate due diligence, including a full life cycle analysis, is done in a fair and open manner that's aligned with commercial real estate practices, and that an appraisal from the Chief Appraiser of Canada is obtained in advance of the purchase. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to answer any questions from the committee members about the Treasury Board Directive on the management of real property.
Thank you very much. Mr. Quinlan, go ahead, please.
Alors, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Real Property Services at Public Services and Procurement Canada, and I'm pleased to discuss our limited role in the transaction process for the Canadian Consul General's residence in New York City. In order to comply with the Treasury Board directive on the management of real property, real estate practitioners from custodian departments are required, as part of their due diligence process, to justify the amount paid for acquisitions and disposals in relation to market value. Plus précisément, conformément aux procédures.
Specifically, according to the procedure set out in Appendix B to the directive, practitioners must obtain at least one appraisal from the Chief Appraiser of Canada before acquiring or disposing of real property, except when there will be an open solicitation of offers and the total value of the real property interest is anticipated to be less than $500,000. In this situation, obtain at least one current estimate of the market value. Emily Bouchard, who's with me today, is currently the Interim Chief Appraiser of Canada, following the departure of the previous Chief Appraiser. She has been the Assistant Chief Appraiser since 2017. I am also accompanied by my colleague, Linda Jenklin. The role of the Chief Appraiser of Canada in any transaction is limited to providing an independent and impartial appraisal supported by market evidence to assist in making informed real estate decisions. As such, the CAC monitors the quality of third-party appraisal reports, ensuring adherence with standards and best practices. Still, according to the same Treasury Board directive, they have to segregate transaction and valuation responsibilities related to real property transactions. The separation of valuation and transaction responsibilities means that the individuals or entities that provide an opinion on the market value of a property are different from those that handle the sale or purchase of the property. The separation ensures that the valuation is impartial and reliable, while transactions are conducted with dedicated negotiators. This ensures integrity and transparency in the transactional process while minimizing the risk of conflict of interest.
In question today, where the value was above the $500,000 threshold, it was a mandatory requirement for Global Affairs Canada to commission an appraisal report from the Chief Appraiser of Canada via PSPC Appraisal and Valuation Services. PSPC's role in the purchase of the Consul General's residence, therefore, was limited to providing appraisal services. PSPC provided these appraisal services through a third party, John C. Monaco, National Valuation Consultants, and was not involved in the cost-benefit discussions regarding the replacement of the previous residence.
Well, I guess the consulting wasn't Christian First from GC Strategies. I guess that's the silver lining. And for those of you who haven't seen our video where the thumbnail is titled Disgusting, where we talked about this earlier, Kelly McCauley actually makes the joke about, well, where can we get a appraisal on the building? And then McCauley's like, well, maybe we can get GC Strategies to do it.
I love Kelly McCauley. He has the best sense of humor. Seriously.
That's what I need to turn into a meme. Maybe we can get GC Strategies to do it.
No, but I did want to tell the audience a quick story that when we had met Kelly McCauley last time we were in Ottawa, we were still kind of undercover, if you will, using the avatars. And the first thing he says to me is he goes,
first thing.
Yeah, you're better looking than your avatar. And then he turns to Ren and goes, you, not so much.
And I was like, yeah, where's my surprise Pikachu face when I need it? So thanks
like
a lot,
I said,
Kelly.
wicked sense of humor.
He looks a lot older in person, so there you go.
Stop.
Anyway, them's fighting words. I think we're just rolling along. But Jilly Beans with a $2 super chat. Real property as opposed to fake property. Yeah, don't even get me started on what the government calls everything. They have this need to change the name of literally everything that comes into the government so that nobody can understand what it's doing. Like, they'll even take like a piece of software that comes in, like a branded piece of software that comes into the into the government, and they'll change the name of it. And it's ridiculous.
And please hit that like button for us.
We are 300 behind. Let's keep it going.
The Chief Appraiser of Canada's role is not to confirm the merit of a transaction, nor is it to reinforce the fact that a custodian department has made a good decision by achieving a given real estate transaction. The role is simply to provide an independent appraisal on the value of a property. The segregation between the appraisal responsibilities and the transaction responsibilities, which rests with, in this case, Global Affairs Canada, is highly important and allows for an impartial step in the overall transaction process.
Wait a minute. So he's saying the Chief Appraiser of Canada, their job is just to say, this is how much the property's worth. They have no responsibility to say, you shouldn't be paying the price that you want to pay for this property.
Well, they're an appraiser. Like, that is the job of an appraiser, is it not? Like, if you bring an appraiser into the home and they go, okay, it's worth, X amount of dollars. Or if you go to a jewelry appraiser and you're like, how much is my ring worth? They'll be like, here, it's worth X amount of dollars. That's
a job, but he's saying, he's justifying the independence. So he can say, oh, well, that way you get an objective view. Well, wouldn't it be objective to have somebody not part of the department evaluate whether it's a good decision to buy it or not?
Well,
it doesn't have to be the appraiser. It could be somebody else.
My guess is that, again, the appraiser's job is to appraise. They tell you how much it's worth. So if you're looking at buying a condo for $9 million and the appraiser says it's only worth $6 million, you'd have to be an idiot to go, oh, I'm paying 50% more. That's a good deal.
Well, just ask Trudeau and the Jets. So, just saying.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll start with 6 minutes with Mr. Barrett, please.
So we're asking you these questions today in the context that we live in Canada. That's with housing prices having doubled, rent having doubled, and we have 1 in 4 Canadians saying that they're going to be relying on food banks this fall. And at the same time, we have the Prime Minister's media buddy who gets a well-paid government appointment in New York City, and the existing multi-million-dollar condo is deemed not good enough, and a $9 million luxury condo is purchased for his exclusive use.
I absolutely love that Barrett opens this with the landscape that we're in Canada today. You're buying this home. Let's just call it what it is. It's a home. It's a condo for $9 million while we have a housing crisis in Canada when 25% of Canadians, 10 million Canadians, are in poverty and will be using a food bank in the fall. This is the background.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. This is one of those things I wish we had talked to Franco about, because, how do the Liberals think this is a good idea? How do they think the optics of this is going to help them at all in an election?
I think they were hoping to, again, I think that's why it was below $10 million. I think they were
pass
hoping
it under the radar.
I think this was just going to go, no, he's going to find out about this because it's under the limits and no one's going to know. That's probably what they hoped would happen. Thank you for playing.
So disgusting.
It's just so stupid.
But what's not disgusting? What's not disgusting is hitting that like button for us.
Yeah. You should hit it. Hit it good. Otherwise, you'll be giving us some
emotional damage.
Okay. Off we go.
I'll start with you, Ms. Tattersall. Who signed off on the decision?
So as I said in my opening remarks, the decision was taken under the authority of Global Affairs. So who signed off would have followed the delegation instrument within Global Affairs.
Okay, so from your department, who was the most senior person who touched the file?
So nobody touched the file at Treasury Board Secretariat because the transaction fell within the limits
Of $10 million.
Of $10 million.
Okay.
So the decision was at Global Affairs.
Mr. Quinlan, you're an assistant deputy minister. Who was the most senior person in your department who signed off or touched this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The chief appraiser in this case, Madam Shaw, who's accompanying me today, was the most senior person who dealt with this file.
Okay, so we have a 3,600 square foot, 3-bedroom plus studio, 4-bathroom, 4.5 baths, with a pool, his and her salons, paddle court, golf simulator. Was this purchase, in the context that I mentioned about the cost of living crisis that Canadians are facing, was this flagged for the minister?
Because everyone needs a golf simulator.
His and her salons, that's not like a hairdressing salon, is it? Like, what the heck are they talking about?
I think that's, salon, not salon.
So what, like bathrooms?
I think so.
Or is it like a dressing room where somebody would come in and do your makeup, maybe? Like if you're that rich.
And hers salons. I don't know. I don't live on Billionaire Row,
no.
so...
No, us poor serfs over here.
Yeah,
I have no idea what they're talking about.
We live with all the rest of the plebs without any salons whatsoever. So,
does it have a fold-out couch? Could it sleep 6? That's from Cryptomeria.
Maybe it sleeps 12. I don't know. But,
yeah,
but it has a pool. Also has a pool.
It has a pool inside, or the facility has a pool? No, it has a pool inside the condo on the 52nd floor.
It sounds like
Was it 52nd floor? I'm trying to remember now.
No. I think they were on like the 9th floor or something like that.
How could you have a pool inside the condo like that?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm not a structural engineer, but
I honestly don't know, but again, this is Billionaires Row we're talking about. Like, they're supposed to be super luxurious.
Bubble Avenue's making fun of us, says the peasants have to Google it.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to spend that much time looking for it either. So Goko Donnie with a $20 super chat. Whew, back in white swamp donkey land. And for those of you who don't know what swamp donkey is, it's one of the greatest slang terms in Canada, by the way. Swamp donkey is just a slang for moose, and I love it. I used to call people swamp donkeys as an insult. Dr. Pepper for the win. Liquid Sanity from from Timmins to Foilet. Just have to do something about the helmet wearing, crayon eating, window liquor, cage drivers. Oh my God, wow. Sounds like Goko Donnie's having a good time. And Alice Avonlea with a $2 super chat. Our local food bank serve a person just once a month. There you go.
Wow, that's kind of sad. I mean, I understand why they may have limits because there's not enough to go around right now. But if you need help, you need help.
Quentin Begamari with a $7 super chat. Building a model of the Lusitania, drinking a beer and watching NP. That's a great night.
Awesome. That's a good
really
combo.
Good night.
Ryan likes to do models, although you don't really have much time anymore.
Yeah, my issue is I can never finish them because I run out of time.
Yeah, so we found some like snap together car models for our sons so that they're able to do it together.
Ooh, shout out to Valda Duncan. Michael Barrett is my MP. You are
Awesome.
a lucky person. All right, off we go.
Madame Bouchard, as the most senior person in your department who touched the file, this excessive, this opulent purchase, was this not something that merited the awareness of the minister?
There's a reason he's asking that, by the way.
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for that question. The Chief Appraiser of Canada does not have the mandate to evaluate the merits of a given transaction or the decision to acquire or dispose of a property. My mandate is simply to take a given address and ensure that it is appraised.
I can guarantee you the conservatives are not going to be liking these answers, because how else would you rephrase that answer?
It's not my job.
It's not my job.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think that's one thing that drives us nuts about government is that it's constantly like, it's not my job. It's not my job. It's not my department, etc. It's like, well, just do it. Like, logically, just finish the task, to follow it to completion, and just do it.
Which is funny because whenever I go into an organization, I love it when people don't take responsibility for things and don't take ownership of things.
No, you don't.
No. I do when I want to get things done because what I end up doing is saying, okay, I own that now. And now, because I own it, you have to do what I say now. So that's what I kind of like. But when I can't take ownership of things, that's when I get really frustrated when other people do not.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, we talk about this in terms of personality all the time, where you're like, well, I can't do X, Y, Z, or it's so-and-so's fault that I'm like this. Once you say that, you take it out of your hands. You need to take ownership of your own flaws and faults and mistakes, and that way you can be the one to fix it.
And we have Jelly Beans with a $2 super chat. Swamp donkeys are worse than grizzlies.
They are. They're scary. We were driving to New Brunswick last summer, and
we saw one by the road.
Yeah, he was maybe 200 or 300 meters up the road. It was startling. It was a young one, like a teenager probably, but still could have done damage. Rick
Liard with a $2 super chat. Indoor pool, 9 million, no problem. Right? And Lady Loves Cats dropping 10 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you so much for that. And if you received a membership from Milady, then please give Milady some gratitude. That would be great. Okay, so let's see how this goes down with Mr. Barrett.
For deciding the value that Canadians get for the purchase, you decide the value of the asset. Who is responsible? And I'm not sure if Treasury Board or if one of you folks would like to respond, but who ultimately is responsible for the value that workers in Western Canada, workers in the prairies, workers in Ontario, Quebec, the Atlantic provinces, what value do they get for this $9 million luxury suite for Justin Trudeau's buddy? Where's the value for Canadian taxpayers here? He was living in a house paid for by the taxpayers.
In the examination, I can talk through the principle of best value that sits within the Treasury Board policy.
Okay, so
This is not
when we're
going
talking
well.
about best value, I'm not looking for chapter and verse on what the policy says. What I'm looking for is the practical application of that. So it falls below a threshold of $10 million and therefore doesn't, trigger the need for Treasury Board review, which I think is, that's wild, in this respect. Multi-million dollar estates not triggering the review of Treasury Board. We've seen at this committee before and others where Liberal members have said that, these decisions are all left to bureaucrats. There's absolutely no ministers who are responsible for any of the tens of millions of dollars that get spent.
But that's the thing. They are responsible and they are accountable. Otherwise, why do we have ministers? This is the whole point. Because the Liberals would have you believe, well, we don't have anything to do with how the government actually runs. Come on.
It just runs itself.
The
budget will balance itself.
Yeah, and the country will just run itself, and we're just here sitting here with our feet up, and we don't read emails, and we don't make decisions. We're just, as Garnet Jenna said, we're just potted plants sitting around, and we get briefings, and we say, oh, that's very nice, and we continue on. And they wonder why Canadians are livid. They wonder why Canadians are desperate for another election. Because none of these people are accountable to their jobs. It is just absolutely disgusting. And then they want to turn around and say, but we're the best option going forward, everybody. No. No, you are not. What is a good option is Carrie Vander... I'm sorry.
Vandervalk.
Vandervalk. Carrie Vandervalk.
Let me just double check. Yeah, Vandervalk.
With a $28 super clap instead of a super thanks or super chat. Thank you so much for that, Carrie. Three rounds of applause for us. Thank you. And that's your first super in a live stream. Thank you for making that us.
And make sure you hit that like button, folks. As you guys hit the like button, we're seeing more and more people creep in. So that means it's working.
So when you hit like, YouTube suggest this to somebody else, and then they click in and they come in and then they hit like, and then around and round and round and we go. Ring the doorbell.
So this is a condo on Billionaires Row in Manhattan. We have government facilities available to the appointee to host meetings that aren't next to his bedroom. So what is the value that Canadians get for this $9 million purchase in Manhattan?
So if it's helpful, I can explain that you only hold real property to serve a program purpose. So there's two aspects, I think, to the questions that you may have. One, which is, what are the programmatic mission requirements that would drive the decision to have an official residence in a specific area?
I'm sorry to pause it, but I think this is actually kind of incredulous. I'm incredulous that she's trying to answer this question. She's trying to explain, oh, it does have value. It really does. Let me try and explain it. You're not going to be able to explain this in any way that is going to produce a satisfactory response to any Canadian across the country, let alone Michael Barrett, who is not having any of this right in front of you. Clearly, Samantha, you have not watched committee before. Anyway, Joshua with a $10 super chat. Useless app, $54 million. Luxury condo, $9 million. A cabin chalet in the woods, $750,000. An undeserved pension, $2.3 million. For everything else, there's the government of Canada.
There's the taxpayer of Canada, because the government doesn't have its own money. They take it from us.
I thought we were going to get like a MasterCard commercial and there and end with priceless.
It was a parody.
I know, but I didn't see the priceless. Oh yeah, I see. For everything else, there's government Government of Canada.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, for everything else, there's the Bank of Canada, because they're the ones who print the money for the Liberals.
Yeah.
Jelly Beans with a $5 super chat. These government workers that handle our tax dollars certainly like having their thumbs up their butts. I appreciate you using parliamentary language in there. Maybe that's where their bad ideas come from. You've been hanging around with Daniel Blakey too much. Mike St. Jean, welcome back to NP supporter, and Coco Donnie with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much. Here's some more funding for the fuzzy.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, and
She's
Daniel
doing
T.
good.
Daniel T. purchasing a meme.
What the hell is going on?
I completely agree. And Avid Gamer with a $2 super chat. It's all Harper's fault. Dang it, it
That's
is all
right.
Harper's fault.
It's always Harper's fault, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, he was totally responsible, and he balanced the budget, and it's 100% his fault somehow.
I have one question for Stephen Harper.
What the hell are they thinking over there?
We do love Stephen Harper, though.
There we go. Anyway, let's go.
Those are driven by global affairs, and I think in the submission to the committee, they reference their policy that drives those requirements. So real property exists for requirements, and then when they go to acquire, what I would expect to see and what I think this committee would want to hear from global affairs about is, did they undertake a cost, like a full life cycle cost analysis of the different options? Did they look at keeping it and making the upgrades? Did they look at what the cost, the full cost, would be of acquiring something new, either through a purchase or through a lease? And what was the results of that analysis, and did it show the value? So that's sort of what the Treasury Board policy sets out, and there's two aspects to that.
Oh no, she said requirements. If I know the Conservatives, they're going to be like, okay, so let's look at those requirements. So, a golf simulator, that was a requirement? That was a requirement?
You know Barrett's going to do it.
I'm
just waiting. Have you seen this? Or
No,
okay.
I'm just guessing because I know him.
Because we know Barrett, yeah.
And you know, a pool, you need that. His and her salons, you needed those. Those were requirements as well. You know, a racquetball court, you need those as well. You needed to be on Billionaires Row. That was a requirement. Sounds like you filled up your list. Good job, Global Affairs. Well done. Like, come on.
That's crazy.
Anyhow, Alice Avonlea with the $2 super chat.
What is it that you do?
And I'll give you a 2-for-1.
What would you say you do here?
Oh man, and Louise A. King with a $100 super chat. Thank you
very
so
much,
much, Louise. Special vacation at Christmas, $80,000. Hotel room for a queen's funeral, $6,000 a night. Fancy condo for your friend, $9 million. Ultimate costs to Canadians, priceless. There you go. Louise comes to my rescue. Thank you so much for that donation, Louise A. King. We very, very much appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks very
Well,
much,
we ran out of
Mr.
time.
Mr. Jory, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and once again, welcome to all the officials back to OGO. I'm going to start with Madam Tattersall. Actually, the line that you were going is very welcome in the line of questioning that I want to ask. You talked about the program needs, which basically is based on what you've said is determined by GAC. And that is outlined in the document that the GAC has provided. You also talked about the fact that TBS lays out a set of requirements, and they review from a completeness point of view rather than a comprehensive and quality point of view. So they look at it and say, was there a cost-benefit analysis? Was there independent appraisal done, and did the value of the new acquisition outweigh the value of the lease or alternative? So in your opening remark, you also talked about the directive on the management of real property. You touched on a couple of the key points under the, I believe it's the section 4.2.23 to 4.2.27, which is validating the need for acquiring the real estate property based on the program needs and on the real property portfolio strategy. So can you, in very brief, do you believe the procedures that's highlighted by TBS under directive on the management of real property from subsection section 4.223 to 4.227, all of those were met?
So thank you for the question. I have to start with the premise that this transaction was not reviewed by Treasury Board. So I can't confirm what GAC did on this transaction. I know officials are here tomorrow and they can confirm that. What I can say is I understand that they undertook a financial analysis of the life cycle costs. I think that's something that this committee may want to ask GAC officials tomorrow. And what I can say is what would be maybe helpful for this committee in talking with GAC officials is to understand what due diligence they undertook. We know they undertook an appraisal. I understand they've undertaken a financial analysis. They should set out any other additional due diligence. I believe, and I'm reading the information they submitted to this committee, that in terms of the open aspect of the requirements, that they engaged a broker to look at a list of properties. So there are things that I understand from the submission to the committee that they've undertaken, but I can't confirm. I think that's something that GAC officials will have to confirm to this committee when they appear.
I keep saying GAC, which is Global Affairs Canada. It just sounds so bizarre to me the way they're saying it. I would have called it GAC, but
I would have just called it Global Affairs.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody else did prior to this.
It's just bizarre.
GAC. But again, there's a reason, right? There's a reason that so many acronyms are used. There is a reason why they rename everything. And the main reason is so that when regular folks are watching and trying to pay attention, they have no idea what they're saying, and so they tune out. You know, they can say, well, you know, it's just because there's so much, and you know, there's so many words. So why is it that no other organization really functions this way? Departments do, but organizations, when somebody comes in general, you can kind of understand what's going on. Yeah, there's people that use acronyms and, you know, all the time, but not when they're meeting between the different business units, because they have no idea what they're saying if all they're using is acronyms. It's the same thing. So, you know, it's kind of like why the financial sector makes things as complicated as possible so they can make everybody believe that there's no other people that could possibly do that. And it's overcomplicated. It's manufactured. And it's to give everybody a job. Same with the government. They count on the fact that it's too boring and too confusing for the general public to follow. Well, too bad, because that's why we're here. And I find it unreal that Global Affairs has a full mandate, completely independent, to just say, you know, if it's below 10 million, you can go off and buy whatever the hell you want.
That's a huge number.
It's a massive number.
And it sounds like you could do it multiple times. Be like, oh, we need a property in New York. We need one in Milan. We need one in Paris. Like, it just seems like as long as it's under 10 million, they can buy whatever they want, wherever they want, as often as they want.
Yep. So
that's crazy.
It's ridiculous. And nobody reviews it. Nobody reviews it. Ms. Tattersall here is trying to say, well, you know, if CBS or if TBS, you know, we have all of these guidelines and blah, blah, blah. Well, what use are the guidelines if you're not making sure that people are following them? That's the whole problem.
Sorry, that quote from Pirates of the Caribbean comes to mind.
Yeah. Oh, we don't treat them more like rules. They're more like guidelines. Anyway. Anyway, Dr. T or Daniel T. Wow. Everyone's a doctor now. Daniel T with a $2.79 super chat. The wonderful world of studies and analysis. Amen to that. Limit Break with a $2 super chat. I love you guys. Best show on YouTube. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And we have the best community on YouTube, hands down.
We sure do. 5W with a $5 super chat. I think the Conservatives are keeping our list of bureaucrats to fire. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Oh, listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll just write that down. And Rob Robillard with a $20 super chat. Sorry I'm late. Going to start from the beginning. Hit that like, people. Fine, we'll pause.
We'll wait for you to catch up.
And Rob Robillard with 5 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for that, Rob. All right.
Policies are set, and I've highlighted the policy. You pointed to some of those, because the threshold is there, and it was below $10 million. There was no need. Am I right to understand that there was no need for the review?
Sounds like even Jawari is
correct.
surprised.
So the transaction limits, and so GAC has had special transaction limits since 1993, which get updated with inflation and market valuation adjustments. But within their authority, they have full authority to transact. But as I said in my opening remarks, it should still be consistent with the Treasury Board policy.
But how do you know?
So Treasury Board sets up the policy, but because it fell under the $10 million threshold, there was no need perceived to, just even from a completeness. Did you have this? Did you have this? Did you have this? Because it's not needed as per the policy. Does that?
So two things. One, there are.
Okay, you know a process is bad when even the Liberals are like, really? That's how it works? That's how our government works? Guys, does that make sense? It's like you look the look on Jawari's face, he's like,
really?
Oh. That doesn't sound right. Like, you know it's bad when the Liberals don't think it's a good process. Oh my goodness. Just, you can't make this stuff up, but the NDP can. Goko Donnie with 10 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much again for that. And Jilly Beans with a $5 super chat. If they buy multiple real properties, then that should raise a red flag or 5 within the Treasury Board, right?
Yeah.
Because a property isn't something that they'd be going and buying every day.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like...
Which is why it's shocking to me that they can buy a property at all without approval.
Right, because there's a whole laundry list of things that come with buying a government property. Like, a lot of them. There's maintenance, there's contracts, there's service agreements, there's insurance, there's leases, there's, land considerations, environmental... Like, there's so many things. Never mind the fact that the government has been trying to move away from leases and owned buildings because it increases the cost of government. They've actually been looking at reducing the footprint of how many offices they have because of the perception, because so many public servants work from home now.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't need those offices, turn them into something useful.
Like the majority of PSAC, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, that's the big union, like 200,000 people, or maybe 300,000. I think it's 3 out of 5 days they work from home. So they only work in the office, like, what, 20% of the time? No, 40% of the time.
Yeah, 40.
So... as a result of that, they've been trying to kind of consolidate, the premises and stuff like that. So, again, why does a consul general need a $9 million and you know what? Even if they somehow justify it, do you think now is the right time to purchase it?
Well, here's what I want to know is that the consul general already had a property in New York.
Correct.
So what's done with that property? Does the government still own it? Why couldn't they fix it up? Would it cost less money to buy a new condo than it would to fix up the old place?
They're trying to say no. It would cost more money to fix it up. Just like
I have a tough time believing that.
Well, just like the Prime Minister was trying to say it would cost more money to try to refurbish Sussex Drive, like the Prime Minister's residence, than it would to go and purchase and build a new one.
Well, but the thing is, when they're like, oh, this is why it's going to cost so much to fix up, they had like all the bells and whistles on, right?
Well, yeah, but and this is the thing. If we had a balanced budget, I don't think anyone would be as concerned about this, because if you had a balanced budget, then you wouldn't be wasting all of this money on frivolous programs. Meanwhile, people are homeless. So it would probably cause less outrage to do that. And, if they were able to make it revenue neutral, sure. But even if they were, look at the optics. You're buying a $9 million billionaire's penthouse.
It looks bad. It looks bad when 25% of Canadians are currently living in poverty.
Bingo. Even if it is revenue neutral, this is not the time to do it. Okay. Now that rant's over, and I managed to keep from swearing, I'm on a roll. Rick Liard, why was this committee not held before the purchase? Because nobody knew about it. Pointless now, as we will never get our money back. Allegedly, they're still negotiating. That's the impression I got, but I don't believe so. I think the sale's already
Yeah,
gone
it sounds
through.
like a done deal.
Alice Avonleaf with 5 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for that, Alice. Daniel T with a $7 super chat. The more they overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. Scotty. And James Duhan. And Gokodani with 20 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for that, Gokodani. And Wifle for Life, good to see you again with a $5 super chat. They impulse buy a $9 million condo. Meanwhile, I still have 12 years to pay off my $163,000 condo with 1 bathroom and no salon. Right? And I bet you don't have, or maybe you do. Do you have a golf simulator?
I don't.
You probably don't. You probably don't. And Limit Break with 5 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very, very much for that. Carl Puris with a $5 super chat. Sadly, thanks to Trudeaunomics, that purchase is only like 18 to 20 homes here now, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And DanDeman966 with a $5 super chat. Just wondering if when the condo was bought, does he also know Mr. Firth? Just wondering if he worked in the chalet this whole time. Election now.
Yeah, why doesn't the Consul General just go live in Firth's chalet? Sounds like a good place for him.
Well, the entire Conservative Party is living rent-free in Christian Firth's head. So
there you go.
Peter G with a $5 super chat. As per the Treasury Board, that is now going up to 3 days a week starting in September. Yeah, and the union is not happy about that. Katie Cat with a $7 super chat. But the old property didn't have a golf. Case closed. Katie Cat just solved it all. I'm going to write Mr. Barrett and say, we
figured it out.
Figured it out.
Yep.
It was that one requirement they didn't have. And one does not just walk in to the Consul General's home and build a golf simulator. You have to go and buy a new one. Rob Barkhouse with a $5 super chat. Trudeau's buddy should sleep in the streets like many Canadians now. Yeah, why don't you try it out for size? And Milady Loves Cats with another 10 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much. Okay, back to this insanity.
Hundreds of real property transactions that may occur in any given year. And so that limit is delegated to the department. So they have the responsibility and accountability for that transaction. And so within their governance and oversight, the expectation would be that when they undertook the transaction, that they ensured that their real property management framework, set out all the right decision points and set out the right sort of approaches and steps to ensure consistency with the policy.
Is GAC the only department that has threshold?
No, GAC is one of 8 departments that have special limits. So every department has general real property limits, and 7 other have special limits, and that takes into account sort of their specific operational needs in real property. So they're not the only ones.
Has there been transaction in the past that you may be aware of that fell under the threshold, and they basically said, well, we're gonna conduct a transaction. We don't have to specifically report to TBS, or TBS said it fell
that's the
under
whole point, Jawari. Keep up.
threshold. Therefore, we're not going to review it.
So there's lots of transactions that will happen across government that take place within departments that fall within their transaction limits.
On average, what's the size of these transactions? Do you have any idea? And I know it's under the threshold, so you...
It's a good question. Because it falls under the threshold, I don't have a line of sight into that. I think it would be an interesting question for GAC to understand what their transactions are. I do know, I tried to prepare a bit for this committee, I do know a lot of their transactions will actually be in respective leases because they do a lot of real property transactions for staff quarters. But in terms of the amount and for what, the higher dollar ones will typically be related to official residences or chanceries.
Thank you.
So let's translate that. So all you have to do is make sure that anything you're buying is under your massive special limit, and you don't have to be accountable to anybody.
Not even your voters.
Not even the voters. And this is a lady from Treasury Board, and they're saying, so, like, what are the value of these transactions? I don't know. I don't know, because I don't see them. Does it sound like something's wrong here?
Yeah, this is... I feel like they should have it based on category, you know? Like, maybe 10 million might be appropriate for one category, but I don't think it is for property.
Well, even if they said, you know what? Office buildings, maybe leave that within, you know, as a, you know, they don't necessarily have to consult. But residences, those should absolutely be consulted, because that has a very different look and feel to buying an office building.
And it's got a different use, right?
100%. And it could be perceived as a conflict of interest, could be perceived as an ethics violation, could be perceived as...
There's a lot of things.
Yeah. A very bad purchase during a housing crisis could be perceived as that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in this government. Limit Break, member comment for 2 months. I thought it was a cottage. But he never called it a cottage. It was a chalet.
It's a chalet. Or maybe it was a cabin. It's like, it's Schrodinger's cottage. Is it a cottage? Is it a chalet? Who knows?
You have to open the box to find out. Wafer for Life with a $2 super chat. I wonder what the monthly condo fees are for that. I don't want to know.
Did we research that? I can't recall.
No. Jarsha with a $10 super chat. When people try to deflect responsibility, it makes me wish Picard from the Pegasus episode was an MP. Riker. Sir, may I suggest you take this up with the Admiral? I'm taking this up with you, Will! Great episode. Great episode. Star Trek has a episode for every scenario, I swear. And Penny D with a $2 super chat. Wasn't the barn also $9 million? It was $8 million.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was 8 or 8 point something at least. But yeah, it's still under that $10 million threshold. Also, we're getting requests to see if you can pump up the committee volume a tad.
Sure, that's not a problem. That I can do. We have the technology. And is it sad that Jarsha, I know the line that comes after that, Will responds to Captain Picard and says, I'm sorry, I said all I can. And then Picard says, very well. If I'm to be in the dark, I shall just trust that you have the best interests of the Enterprise. Something like that.
You're such a nerd.
And if I find for 1 minute that trust has been misplaced, I shall have to reconsider the command structure of this ship. That's ridiculous that I remember that.
Yes, it
Transcription with a $5 super chat. Tom Clark. Wow, this place looks even better than the $8 million Rideau bar. Well played, transcription.
Nice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ladies, sir, thank you for coming in on this chilly, almost autumnal summer day. Ms. Tattersall, a few minutes ago, you noted that the threshold was established in 1993 and it has been adjusted since then. When was the last adjustment that set the value at 10 million?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for that question. The last time the limit was reviewed was 2022. There was an adjustment setting the value at $10 million for that department. When that was carried out, what was the limit? The previous time the limit was updated was in 2006. No. In 2022, what was it? So that set it to 10 million before. It was 4 million. That was back in 2006.
Whoa!
What? You guys almost got an F-bomb out of me.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cooper. To raise it. To,
2.5
Yeah, 2.5
times.
250%.
You cannot tell me. You cannot tell me for 1 minute that they were not looking at purchasing something in the $9 million range.
So she said last time it was raised was 2006?
Yes. So
and
it
then
was $4 million.
In 2022, it went up to 10 million.
Let's-
That's not inflation, folks. That's really gross.
That's beyond disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like the dead air is just my brain is exploding. I'm just holy crap.
Yeah, you said that right.
Again, don't tell me that they were not looking at purchasing something immediately prior to this limit going up. You cannot
You mean
convince me
immediately
that.
after? Oh, you mean
Prior
to, so that they raised the limit so that they could make the purchase. Understood.
Without consulting Treasury Board.
Understood.
Because otherwise they would have had to consult Treasury Board.
Yeah. That's gross, dude.
It's, oh my God.
Like my skin feels gross. Like I need a bath, you know?
So here's a question. What if Trudeau wanted to purchase something for his buddy back then, but didn't want it, really tied to him and cabinet at all? So he was like, well, we should raise your limit to 10.
Okay, we have no proof of that, right?
No, we have no proof of
We try
that.
to stick with the facts.
We have no proof of that.
But that's a good conspiracy theory.
It's a really good conspiracy theory, and that's all it is a conspiracy theory. There's no evidence to suggest that at all. But
just in case somebody clips it,
yes,
we don't have evidence of that.
Well, somebody will clip it without the after report, and then there'll be a dishonest shill. Anyway, Big B with a $2.79 super chat. Give him a room in the consulate. Yeah. And Wendy M with a $7 super chat. Revenue neutral. Where have we heard that before, right? It's the it's the Consulate General of the carbon tax. Rob Barkos with a $2 super chat. Yeah, let's get Pierre in here too.
What the hell are they thinking over there?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And and then we have this.
Oh, come on!
And this.
Emotional damage.
And this.
WTF.
I think that catches us up on most of the emotions everyone's going through. Julie Beans with a $2 super chat. Can we storm Parliament? No. Mr. Roscoe Pico, since 2022, how many things have been purchased? That's the other question.
That is a good question.
And Goko Donnie with a $20 super chat. The difference between government and thieves. Thieves don't pretend they're trying to help you.
Very good point.
And Milady Loves Cats with a $10 super chat. I'll give it to you.
WTF.
Like, oh my goodness. I wasn't even looking at chat when that happened, but I imagine like it exploded. Yeah, pretty much. Anyway. Okay.
Wow. That was bad.
All right, Vignola, ask the intelligent question.
So there was a number of 40 years, but that's only 16 years. Sorry, 16. Even 1993 is roughly 30 years ago. So what explains that 4 million was raised all the way up till 10 million?
Thank you.
Were requests to exceed the authority so frequent that it was determined that the limit was way too low? I'll start in French, but I might move into English later. There was an assessment every 6 years, if I understand correctly.
May 19th, 2026 had not been updated for 16 years. Your math is better than mine. And what GAC did was it did a review of where it holds properties in 23 markets.
Mais je vais reprendre ma question. Est-ce qu'il...
I'll follow up on my question. I'll ask it in another way. How many requests were there for spending above the $4 million limit that justified that the limit should be raised till $10 million, 2.5 times its initial value? That's a good question. I would have to come back to you on that one because I don't have those numbers with me. Thank you.
That's a good question. That's the answer.
Maybe she wasn't expecting this question. Maybe she should have been expecting this question.
She should have been expecting this question.
But clearly wasn't. So the thing is, sometimes when witnesses don't know the answer while they're sitting there in committee, they will submit in writing the answer to committee at a later date.
But here's the thing. She's the one, because I've been listening carefully, she's the one that actually volunteered the information on the department spending limits and introduced this whole fact that there are 8 departments with special spending limits that are over and above the general one. So she's the one who introduced that. She wasn't prompted for that. She introduced it. So if you're going to introduce something like that, and the department that has the special spending limit is the one that bought the condo, and you know that this specific department had their limit raised by 2.5 times in 2022, you should probably know the answer as to why that happened.
So then, do we know what the regular spending limit is? Because clearly Global Affairs has their own spending limit. So do we know what like the baseline is, or do we not know that information?
So it depends on the size of the organization, because there are different sizes of organizations in the government. There are what they refer to as SDAs, or small departments, small department administrations, and then there are the rest of the government organizations. So SDAs can have like 100 people, 50 people, 500 people. Those are the small agencies in the government. And then there's organizations in the government that have like 20,000, 30,000 people, right? So, and CBSA is one of those ones. So you're going to have a spending limit for your, I will say, your large departments and agencies, and then you're going to have spending limits for small departments and agencies. So there's a couple of different categories there. I wasn't privy to knowing what the spending limit to the large one was, but it's
less than 10, I guess we can assume, right?
Well, it'll be less than 10, but it'll also be available for public knowledge out there. So anyhow, moving along, we have John Gauthier with a $5 super chat. That's it. I curse karma on Trudeau. May you reap what you've sown. Canadians' patience are amazing. And Chris Accurate with a $2.79 super chat. Bribing the media does not come cheap. That is true.
And not all media can be bribed, right?
100%. And Goko Donnie with a $10 super chat. Unleash the Brockinator on her. Tell me we have Cooper and Barrett here too. Barrett is here. Cooper is not.
But Janice is working remotely because he just had a new baby. Him and his wife are celebrating their 6th child.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a baby Isidore Carlo Richard Genuis.
There you go. Genis.
Or Genis, pardon me. Sorry.
Never mind the fact that all of his colleagues still call him Genis.
Well, I haven't actually made that mistake in a long time. I guess I'm just getting tired.
And Rocco Martino with a $5 super chat. NP can do a 48-hour straight live stream with all Liberal scandals. I don't even think 48 hours is enough. I think you're right. And Chris Accurate with a $2.79 super chat. The term CAC, it's actually GAC. Makes me gag. And Jilly Beans with a $2 super chat. She done fudged up the witness, that is. Yes, she did.
Yeah, that was a big mistake.
Was it common? Well, I'm looking at what was happening in 2007, 2008. There was a $15 million construction in South Korea. A $3.5 million parking lot was built, but of course that was under the $4 million limit at the time. A chancellery was built in Bangladesh, $6 million. Does the value of real estate often go above $5, $6, $7 million? Or is that something exceptional? I'll answer in English.
quand il y a un projet comme une...
When there is a project, like a construction project, for example, that could require Treasury Board review because that would be a project. During a project, there might be a number of reasons for a review.
Capacity, there's an assessment for that. It could come to Treasury Board. During the last few years, I'm not aware of any major real property transactions that have come to Treasury Board.
OK.
That's a problem.
Donc, si je comprends bien,
So if I am understanding correctly,
There was no need.
in this case, the New York case, you didn't have to grant authority because it was under the $10 million threshold. Does the $10 million threshold include or exclude life cycle costs of the apartment? Or is it just $10 million only for the purchase and that's it? Just
Only
for the
for the
purchase.
purchase.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Not
sense of the life
surprised.
cycle costs? Was a maintenance plan taken into account? You wouldn't want an apartment to fall into disrepair. That's not something established, but it's a good point. It was just a question. Normally, when you buy a house, you figure out that you're going to have to repair the roof or the windows in 5 years, so I imagine there was some similar planning. In this case, I would hope so, at any rate. Maybe this question is more for GAC, but I'll ask you, Ms. Bouchard. GAC sent an appraisal report for the residence on 47th in New York. Wonderful building. I've actually seen it in real life, not realizing it was this one. The report says an appraisal report was carried out, and in US dollars, the apartment is worth roughly $6 million. So that gives us roughly $9 million in Canadian dollars. Was there an equivalent appraisal report for the Park Avenue residence, which is now up for sale? As part of its procedures, Global Affairs called upon my office to obtain a market value appraisal. One was carried out, I believe, in 2023. I'd need to look into my notes to get the exact month, but I believe it was in June. We carried out an update report this year in June 2024. So we updated the appraisal report.
I think I just found the condo fees.
Tell us. 10 G's a month?
Ladies and gentlemen, if this is accurate, $15,000 a month is your condo fees.
What's your source on that one?
They're allegedly referring to CBC News. Allegedly. So I don't have a completely
We don't have the
accurate
CBC
source.
We'll have to do some more digging to verify.
But so we'll see.
Because we don't. Sometimes we find things on Twitter that say, "Oh, CBC said it," but we want to actually find the CBC article. We want to get to like the original point of information. So
this is why we never trust Twitter.
Yeah.
and just take our sources from Twitter because
or social media in general.
People can make up anything that they want and put it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So anyhow, and if just look at the NDP.
So we don't know for sure, but it is possible that it's $15,000 a month.
I'd believe it.
I believe it too, but we want to find that
100%.
that original source before we confirm anything.
Anyway, Rocco Martino with a $2 super chat. I miss the South African interpreter. Don't we all?
Yes, he's awesome. I mean, this interpreter is really good too, but I miss the South African gentleman. He was good.
She's good for a different reason. Like she's quick. She seems like she's accurate. The problem is she's very monotone. So you actually don't get any kind of feeling for the tone of the person that's actually speaking. So but otherwise she's okay.
I cannot go into too much detail about the appraisal report, given that the unit is up for sale. We wouldn't want to compromise the smooth functioning of a transaction, so I don't want to go into the report too much, but I can say that a report was requested and updated. Okay, I'll come back to you later. Thank you.
Grack, over to you, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good to see everyone virtually. Good to be back at the committee, and I want to start by thanking our witnesses for helping us understand how these kinds of purchases and sales work and the role of Treasury Board and PSPC in that process. And my colleagues have canvassed a number of aspects of this, and I understand that the extent or the breadth of questioning is somewhat limited given TSB and PSPC's limited roles. I'm curious, though, how far back the basic process, the basic structure for these kinds of transactions. We've talked a little bit about the policies that are in place and the procedures. How far back do those procedures go? And perhaps this is a question for Ms. Tattersall from TSB.
So the current directive has been in effect since 2021, but there was a policy on real property in advance of that. I don't know how far back it goes, but it goes back a far way, so it would have covered transactions for decades now, but the current policy goes back to 2021.
And following on my colleague Ms. Vignola's question about the increase in the threshold that was made in 2022 when it was increased from 4 million to 10 million, I'm wondering what the rationale. I assume that there was a request from Global Affairs to increase the limit. What was the rationale for increasing the limit? Because obviously it comes at the costs of reduced scrutiny, reduced accountability, reduced transparency, all of those things. What was the rationale that was provided for that quite significant increase in the threshold?
So the thresholds have an expiry date. So the last time that the threshold for an acquisition for an official residence had been updated was in 2006, and that's when the 4 million had been set up. There was 16 years in between that. So the business case looked at inflation over the 16 years, the changes in the market conditions, the real property market conditions. And then it may be important to hear from GAC officials as well. But they basically, is my understanding from that increase, they looked at 23 different markets because GAC has missions in, I think, over 100 countries. So they looked at 23 different markets and looked at the average price for an acquisition of an official residence. And it was on that basis that the update to the limit was made. Again, as I previously said, that those limits are looked at on a regular basis, and the next time the scheduled review of those limits is in 2026.
What would the downside or the risks be of leaving the $4 million limit in place to ensure greater scrutiny of these transactions?
So first, I think it's important to note that Global Affairs, even if they're taking the transaction under their own authorities, still has to ensure that they have the proper due diligence, the proper scrutiny, the proper decision making. So I think that's an important first. The next thing would be to understand what their real property holdings are. And so I don't know if I have details on that, but typically I think it's a question for GAC as to how many official residences or chanceries that they own around the world and how that would bump up against the limit. The bigger ones, the more complex ones that may have a project element would certainly come into the board if it was over their risk and capacity. But I don't have anything else to answer, to add to
that. So
I
understand that Global Affairs is responsible for their own due diligence, and I'm not questioning that process. My understanding is that the reason that Treasury Board gets involved in transactions over the $10 million threshold is to provide an added layer of accountability and due diligence on behalf of the Canadian public. And so I guess, given the challenges that we've seen in procurement government-wide, why, just for the sake of caution, we wouldn't have a lower threshold in order to ensure that there are more eyes on each transaction and that Canadians are getting the best value?
GAC has been managing its real property for decades, and it's had special limits since 1993. I found the number. They have 87 official residences across government. So within that limit, it's a balance between those transactions that GAC routinely will undertake and manage, balanced against those that would be above that limit that really necessitate Treasury Board approval.
Okay. I believe you said the next review of the limits is in 2026. So it was 14 years between reviews and then 4 years between reviews. Is the intention to have, maybe I misunderstood the timeline here. Is the intention to have more frequent reviews of the limits?
So I should clarify. The period of review hasn't changed. It's that the limits were not increased. I think in 2019 there was a review. They were not increased in 2019. There were reviews. So there's regularly scheduled reviews. We don't update them necessarily each time it comes up for a review.
Okay. And this might be a question for
Sorry,
Mr.
that is our time.
There's Mr. Chair.
It's past our time, but
Thanks,
lots of opportunity. We are booking tomorrow's meeting, by the way, at committee request at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, just for you, Mr. Backrack.
Oh, snap. That was some shade thrown up.
Was it?
Well, he's in BC.
Oh.
That's 6 a.m.
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
Anyway, well, if you're going to work remote, I guess there's some prices to
pay.
To pay. Okay, so there was a lot said there, and there was a lot found while he was saying that.
Yeah, we did a little bit of work in the background. We wanted to confirm our numbers.
So, things are actually worse than they appear. But anyhow, so it's revealing to me that she says, and this is where I think Backrack was trying to kind of pin her down, where she said, oh, well, reviews were done the review period actually occurred, but it wasn't until 2022 that we magically decided, oh, it has to go up by
2.5 times.
By $6 million.
Yeah.
So what? The previous review period, you said, nope, that's enough. Okay, that's suspicious. Anyhow, because if you were following inflation, and this is what she alluded to, then with each review period, it would go up. And if inflation's supposed to be around 2% a year, and if you're reviewing it, every 6 years or so, then you would expect it to go up by 12%. So it wasn't increased by 12% per year or per review period. It wasn't increased by 2% per year as per normal inflation. So now you just decided, hey, it's time to go and buy a $9 million condo that we don't want Treasury Board to see. Interesting. But here's some other things, folks. So they're trying to say that they spent $9 million on this condo that was listed for $6 million because of the exchange rate. Well, that's not correct. Because the exchange rate on $6 million right now is $8.1 million Canadian.
But was it the same back then? Like, has the exchange rate fallen significantly, or has it stayed roughly the same?
It's gone up and down, up and down.
Well, we need to check the accuracy. I mean, you would need like another 10%? I'm bad at mental math, folks. But you need like another 10% maybe for it to make up that extra $1 million or $900,000.
So, the exchange rate would have to be 1.5.
And I don't think it's not ever. I don't think it's been that high recently.
No,
is what I should say.
No. It's been around $1.33 for a while.
So do you think they overbid?
That's what they're suggesting.
Okay.
Is that they overbid. Now, in terms of the fees, so
we found a CBC article that linked to a website called Street Easy that has the listing of this property. And it is listed as monthly commons charges $7,788 per month. Presumably that's US dollars. So when you convert that to Canadian, it's $10,600 a month.
Yeah. Let me see if I can...
I can toss it in the chat so everybody can have a look.
Hold this up for everybody. Just give me a couple seconds, folks, to kind of get this up.
So what I will give you first is the CBC article in the chat. Oops. So there's the CBC article going by. We're going to make sure that we put all this stuff in the description later on. And then within the CBC article, there is a sentence that says, according to an online listing, etc., etc. And that's where this link comes in. So this is the online listing, and that's where it lists the condo fees.
Okay, so let's pop over to here. So this is the site that Tanya's talking about, and so you can see there's the there's the monthly taxes there, so $7,400 a month,
US presumably.
Yeah, and you have what 70 almost $7,800 in common charges. So those are probably your condo fees. So that together. And when I had a condo, my taxes and fees were kind of paid together. So I don't know if that's adding up to that $15,000 a month. That's probably, reasonable to look at. But one thing we can actually confirm is there is no pool in the condo.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So it looks like a common pool, and it looks like a common racquetball place, court.
Okay, so it's just amenities. I mean, lots of condo buildings have amenities.
Yeah, and most of these pictures are some of these are going to be from inside the condo. Some of these are going to be, everything is marble, of course it is. Some of these are going to be from the lobby, and here's the pool. So you can see that is more than probably 3,600 square feet itself. So there's the racquetball court, AstroTurf.
So is the golf thing inside the unit, or is it an amenity as well?
My guess, based on looking at the floor plan, which is this, is that it is not in the unit.
Okay, so it's another amenity. See, I don't like it when, because it was Barrett that was like, oh, there's a pool, there's this, there's that. It's not in the condo, though. It was a little misleading the way he said it. And I don't particularly care for that.
I love on the floor plan here. They're just assuming you're going to have a grand piano. Right? Here's your dining room with your, 2, 4, 6,
12.
8, 10, 12 person table. With what's probably a crazy bar or a serving area there. There's a dressing room here. There's a primary bedroom here. There's a bedroom over here. There's a bedroom over here. You have a study over here.
Each bedroom has its own bathroom?
Yes, they do.
Swanky.
So, So this is something else, folks. This is something else. Anyway, let's get to some of the activity that's going on, because this is I think we're going to need some drinks before the end of the night. Goko Donnie with a $5 super chat. Frost advisory here. NP zipper hoodie for the win.
Awesome.
Yay.
Do you like that? I am in love with my zipper hoodie, and we've sold a lot of them, so I hope that all of you are too. They're just so comfy.
Goko Donnie, I just talked to him. 5W with a $2 super chat. No, Goko Donnie with another $5 super chat. Random have a flying squirrel playing shy with me as I listen in. Interesting. And 5W with a $2 super chat. Looks like Taylor took a pop to the schnoz.
Oh no.
Him and Justin Trudeau. Wendy M with a $14 super chat. GAC manages the real property. Who manages the fake property? I had to ask.
Christian Firth.
Christian Firth is outsourced to GC Strategies. Didn't you know? Jilly Beans with a $2 super chat. Would it be $9 million with closing costs?
Oh, good point. That could be.
I don't think so, because they've said that the purchase price is $9 million. When somebody asks you how much you pay for your house, you don't really include all the closing costs.
But okay, I don't know how they do it in the States, but in Canada, it's the seller that pays the realtor. But they would have to go through a real estate lawyer and pay for that.
But you don't include that in your purchase price.
Yeah, I suppose not. And one would think that the government of Canada has lawyers in spades on hand, right?
Well, just as you don't include land transfer taxes and all of that, that's separate. You don't deal with any of that. So, so I imagine it would not include closing costs based on how they're talking about it. Anyway, off we go.
Mrs. Block, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just want to continue along the lines of some of my colleagues, but also just to establish an understanding about PSPC's role when it comes to the real property that the Government of Canada holds, as well as the Treasury Board Secretariat's role. So PSPC is the real property manager for the Government of Canada. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PSPC manages most of the office portfolio for the Government of Canada, roughly a quarter of the real property holdings if you think of square meters of office space or other kinds of special purpose space. And PSPC also manages a large portfolio of engineering assets, infrastructure, things like dams and bridges.
Okay. Does PSPC provide any sort of oversight to the property that we own in other countries?
No, as previously indicated in my opening remarks, PSPC's role following Treasury Board policy, Treasury Board Secretariat policy, is to provide the appraisal services.
Okay, so I'm wondering if both you and Ms. Tattersall would be willing to table your opening remarks to the committee.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We used to receive them ahead of a committee meeting and would be happy to have those in writing. So when GAC purchases property, are those properties registered with PSPC? Where are they registered?
Well, with regards to PSPC, we do not have a registry of properties outside of PSPC's portfolio, with some very limited exceptions. So I can turn to Treasury Board to complete that answer.
So GAC would be the custodian for the real property, and you can either acquire it or they could it could be crown leased when they have it.
Okay, so I know that you spoke about the real property holdings of GAC. I would appreciate it if you would table that list that you referenced to the committee.
I think I asked how many. I think GAC officials, I would feel more comfortable if you got it directly from the department and their holdings.
I will do that tomorrow, for sure. So who writes the guidelines for real property purchases on behalf of the Government of Canada.
Ding, ding, ding. Who is Jack Sparrow? I don't think I would win that answer. But he'd probably write better guidelines than are already in place. Just saying. Just saying. Anyway, for those that don't know, this is actually right up Kelly Block's alley because she's the Shadow Minister for Public Service and Procurement. So Mr. Duclos, who is the current Minister of PSPC, that's the acronym, when the Conservatives form government, Kelly Block will be taking that job, assuming the roles in cabinet do not change. So this is right up her alley, which is why she is digging into this right now.
So we have a Treasury Board policy that sets the framework, and then within that, there's a requirement that in each custodian department, so GAC being a custodian department, has a senior designated official that is appointed responsible for the management of real property within GAC, and they would have a real property management framework that they're responsible for that would set out how things are done within GAC.
So the Treasury Board Secretariat role, and I'm quoting, in procurement includes developing, implementing, monitoring, and renewing procurement-related policies and instruments. That it also evaluates business proposals, monitors bidding processes, and ensures compliance with policies and standards. What we've heard today is that you only do that once a purchase or an acquisition is over $10 million. Is that correct?
So maybe first, when we talk about real property acquisition, it's the directive on the management of real property that applies, not the procurement policy.
Okay.
And so, as I said in my opening remarks, we set the administrative framework, and then if an acquisition or a disposition is over the limits that a department has, it would come to Treasury Board for authority.
Thank you. So where did the departments get the funding for these types of purchases? Is that budgeted for in the annual
Great question.
budget of the Government of Canada?
That's a great question. Paige. So most custodians will have a capital budget. That is where they get the funding for investments in real property. So, for example, GAC's Vote 5 capital budget, for 2024-25 is $192 million. So they have a capital budget that is responsible for those expenditures, which is then voted on through the estimates process.
So they have this pool of money that's provided to them in the budget, and then through the estimates process, do they provide a vote highlighting what they are actually spending this money on?
So it would be considered sort of A-based funding. So they have so many real property assets that they have A-based funding to help manage all of those assets. And that's in their Vote 5, and that would be in their estimates.
Okay, so they're getting into some financial terms here, so I want to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. Before I get to that, I did see that there was a question in chat, what is a shadow minister, because I mentioned that before. So, Tony, you want to say what a shadow minister is?
Yeah, so everybody knows what ministers are. They're government ministers that are responsible for certain files in the government. I think there's 37 of them right now. The shadow ministers are the official opposition component to that. So if you have a minister of finance, you've got a shadow minister of finance. So your minister of finance is going to be a liberal because they're in government. Your shadow minister of finance is going to be a conservative who scrutinizes what that individual is doing. They have access to certain files, things like that, to allow them to do that work, to scrutinize the government and hold them to account. The way the Westminster parliamentary system works is that we have our governing party and then the other party, because it used to really just be two parties. So the other party is the official opposition, and their job is to make sure that the government is doing their job.
Well, and the other thing is that it allows the opposition party to effectively have a government in waiting, because it's possible that probable, not is different, but it's possible that a sitting government can fall at any time. And in the case of a sitting government, being able to fall at any time, as the opposition party, you want to be ready should an election, form, to have everything lined up and ready to go, should your party take power. And to Tanya's point, you assign a corresponding shadow minister, meaning somebody who would be the incumbent to the actual minister's role should you take government, so that they can scrutinize what's going on, but also be very familiar with that file should they need to take over. That way they're not going to be spending 6 months to a year to become familiar with that file in order to do their job properly. So that's what the shadow ministers and the shadow cabinet do.
You'll also hear the shadow cabinet referred to as critics, like Michael Barrett is the ethics critic. So he's a shadow minister for ethics critic. Yeah. Same thing.
And the NDP also has their critics as well. The problem is they don't have enough to actually have a full cabinet because they have virtually no MPs. But they have just enough to help Justin Trudeau. Now, what they're talking about in terms of the budgets are typically divided into two types of spending, and they are completely separate from each other. One is operational expenditures, or OpEx. The other is capital expenditures, or CapEx. So the main difference between them is when you capitalize something or use capital or spend your capital budget on it, you are usually purchasing something that is going to retain value over a period of years. Now, in some cases, that value will go up, and in some cases, most cases, that value will probably go down.
Like computer equipment, for example. That
Correct.
will go down, but it's still a capital expense.
And what finance departments will do is they will amortize the value of these capital assets over a period of time, and it really helps them in tax-related purposes. So that's to clear that up. And operational expenses are literally things that you spend that are, they go out the door. There's not really any value to them.
Like paper in your office. You need office paper for your printer, and it doesn't retain its value at all. Pretty much as soon as you buy it, it goes to zero. But you need it. You need it to run your office.
Paper, salaries, software,
pens,
like disposable
ink.
Things, and that's in your operational budget. And in many cases, you may have sometimes a extremely large capital budget versus a smaller OpEx budget. It all depends on what's approved and what you may need for that year. So hopefully that clears that up. Rick Liard with a $2 super chat. Who will be shadow minister when the PCs have all this?
That's a good question. Somebody in the block, probably.
Can you imagine? It's never happened, but can you imagine? That would be a really, really dysfunctional parliament.
It would be. And, we joke about it, but we really do need a strong opposition party because their job is to make sure that the government doesn't do what the government is doing right now.
Yeah, and call
that's
them
not
out.
That's not to say anything against Pierre and the Conservatives. It's just that because the NDP have forgotten that they're supposed to be an opposition party and have now allied themselves with the governing party, that's where the problem lies. We do not have a strong opposition because they've gone and done this.
So because
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Atwin, go ahead, please.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank
Can
you
we
everyone for
skip
joining
this?
us today and our witnesses. I'm joining from beautiful Fredericton, New Brunswick. Our average home price here is about $297,000. So I want to help, Canadians understand this. I want to understand this as a member of Parliament as well. So,
And that's all you get. That's all you get.
Yeah, I don't want to
Nola, please, for 2.5.
Merci. Rapidement,
Thank you. Very quickly, Ms. Tattersall. Does the Treasury Board carry out assessments of monthly costs of an apartment, or do you only look at purchase prices over a certain limit? Is there also a limit for monthly costs? There's an annual and total limit. In total for every apartment, or for each one, for example? And what is the annual limit?
J'ai l'information pour...
I've got the info for Global Affairs. For GAC, I'm going to give it to you in English.
Purchases, limits, it's all available online. So
Okay.
after this, I'm happy to send to the clerk also
S'il
the
vous plaît.
link to all the transactions, and it'll
Merci.
be there for GAC and everybody, if that's more
Oui.
helpful than me
Oui.
saying it all out.
Merci.
Okay.
Oui, vous pouvez me l'envoyer, il n'y a pas de problème.
Yes, you can send that my way, no problem there. Generally, in Canada, there's a policy for purchases by PSPC and other departments of a call for offers. The current purchase on West 57th Street is part of the 5 least expensive units viewed. Why did the government not go with the cheapest unit?
Mark and I know each other well, so we're always butting into each other. Il y a ce concept de l'optimisation des ressources.
There is the concept of best value. But this is an investment as well. There is a balance between costs and program objectives and government priorities.
An apartment that's more expensive but is accessible, supports the greening government objectives, may be best value. So low cost, the lowest cost is not always the best value.
Thank you very much.
That's garbage.
Mr. Backrack, please.
That's total garbage. Because it doesn't support the government's green values or whatever she had said. Come on. And while I was searching for that other article, CBC is reporting that, oh, well, the old property sold for $14 million. Or, no, sorry, it hasn't sold yet. It's listed for $14 million. Therefore, it's a value. Like, we got a bargain on this condo. I mean, you can list a property for whatever you want. It doesn't mean it's going to sell for that.
And well, this is prime a prime example, because they listed it for, well, I don't know if it was the first price change, but 5 months earlier it was listed for an additional 1.6 million US. So they didn't get what they originally wanted either. So they had to drop the price by 18%. So yeah, just because you list something at 14 million doesn't mean you're going to get it. Anyhow, just ridiculous. I was also fact checking Jenica Atwin on the average house price in Fredericton, and it looks like she was correct. So
Yeah, I was going to say, a friend of ours purchased a home out there, and it was around that price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a question to you, Mr. Chair, are we doing 2 6-minute rounds here?
This is just, it's the opening is 6 minutes, and then 5-5, 2.5, 2.5, 5-5, repeating through.
I'm just confused because Ms. Vignola's round, she just had 2 6-minute slots, I believe. So I'm just looking to you in terms of...
No, her actual in questioning time was about 2.5, 3 minutes. We're letting everything run a tiny bit. Yours ran a bit late as well. But it was probably 6 minutes because of the suspension. It's probably a bit long because of the suspension.
We cut out the
restart your
suspension.
time. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My first question of this round is for Mr. Quinlan, and I know in the wake of the ArriveCan scandal, PSPC has committed to a number of procurement reforms. I'm curious whether those reforms will affect the real property procurement process, and if so, how?
There's only one.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Good
Donc,
answer to that.
je suis le sous-ministre.
Thank you. So I
Why are
am
you answering
the
in French?
Doesn't want us to
Senior
know.
ADM for Real Property Services within Public Services and Procurement Canada. We have a number of collaborations with our procurement colleagues. I would be happy to provide you, after the meeting, with a more detailed response on the application of measures to improve real estate management.
So just to be clear, Mr. Quinlan, that's a yes. Those reforms will affect real property procurement. However,
no.
a more detailed response would be required.
Donc, encore une fois,
Again, Chair, here we're referring to certain reforms in procurement. Given that I'm the Senior ADM for Real Property Services, and given that there is a collaboration between Real Property Services and Procurement Services, I commit to providing the committee with a list of reforms that could potentially impact real property.
Okay, I'd be going after this guy because he's not answering the question. He's refusing to answer the question.
And I think he switched to French from English on purpose.
I 100% think he did. 100%.
He doesn't want to get clipped.
Nope. And and it's a yes or no question. He's like, oh, and by the way, Senior ADM, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister. Not elected, appointed. So
it's like a job you apply for, essentially.
yeah, or you get asked to do it. So
Yeah, they come find you. Yeah.
yeah. Rick or Bob Barkhouse with a $2 super chat. This guy is shady as fudge. So I know that's what Rob meant. Yeah, and answer the question. This is not a difficult question, and the fact that he's refused to answer it twice.
And switch languages, because Backrock is not speaking French.
And this guy has no French accent, unless he's like phenomenally
Bilingual.
Yeah, which is possible, but it's just strange.
But I would like to assure the chair that real property will not be unduly affected by the reforms under discussion. In the context of real property, there are procurement processes, and the reforms to procurement could potentially affect real property, and via you, Chair, it would be my pleasure to provide a detailed response for use by the committee in writing.
I think that would be of interest to the committee. So if you don't mind, Mr. Quinlan, providing that response, that would be much appreciated.
Great, thanks. And we do have, we passed a motion that all responses are required within 21 days. So if you could do that. Next up, we have Mr. Brock. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. Before I get into my substantive questions, I'm just curious, in relation to another Justin Trudeau scandal, the Arrive scam, it was revealed that prior to a first committee attendance, the president of the CBSA, the deputy minister, was summoned to the Prime Minister's office, presumably for coaching. Have either of you, and Mr. Quinlan on screen, has anyone received coaching prior to your appearance today? Was anyone? No? Mr. Quinlan?
No one just answering, Mr. Chair, sorry, just to answer the question directly, the answer is no.
Thank you. No one was required to attend the Prime Minister's office? No? Mr. Quinlan?
The answer is no, Mr. Chair.
Did anyone get direction from the minister, in your case, Minister Duclos?
No direction, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, I know there is a lot that has been written in our nationals with respect to the extravagant nature of this acquisition.
Just before we go, For those that may not know, or you may not remember, Erin O'Gorman, it was revealed that prior to her, I believe it was her first time at committee, she went to the Prime Minister's office,
which is a building in Ottawa. It's not necessarily like Justin Trudeau's office.
It's a building.
It can be, but there is a building called the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah, and it's basically where the Prime Minister's office is located in that building, but also there's boardrooms and all of this other stuff. Now, she met with members of the Privy Council office and shared her opening remarks with them that she was going to be speaking at committee. That's very strange.
That's sus, for sure.
And she was called out on it, obviously, at committee. And this is why Brock is asking this question, because he's wondering, well, this is a brand new scandal for Justin Trudeau, so are the Liberals trying to stick handle this and coach people in order to minimize the damage to them? So that's where this is coming up.
I have to read this one by Riding the Pines. This is not coaching, just major training and advice, chalet or cabin.
There was a quote from Global Affairs I appreciate, not attributable to anyone here, but I wish to read it out to the record. The residence currently used for the head of mission and consul general in New York, this is the Park Avenue property, was purchased in 61, last refurbished in 82. The apartment does not meet new building codes nor Global Affairs standards. Now, the purchase at West 57th is listed as follows. There is an elegant entry foyer with white Makuba stone floors. Is that a requirement for the Council General of Canada?
Okay, so it wasn't Barrett, it was Brock. Oh,
very nice.
Oh, I knew one of them would. Sorry for the freeze frame, Mr. Brock. But I think all of Canada is going bug-eye over this. Brilliant. Just brilliant.
Well, and if you check out that link that we had posted, I think I can post it again. I think I still have it. Yeah, check out this link. You can see images. Oh, no, wrong link. Hold on. I'll show you images. You can see the images of this place, and it is extravagant.
Jilly Beans with a $5 super chat. Brock knows Quinn is shady as fudge with a language switch, though I would guess that they would deny being coached anyway. Yeah, absolutely. And how do you prove somebody is being coached unless you have evidence to the contrary? So, but usually the Conservatives know the answer to the question prior to them asking it, right? So,
and there's that link. You can check out what this place actually looks like. It is palatial.
Perhaps in answering that question, I've sort of alluded to it before. You only hold real property to support...
Ma'am, that's not my question.
Right.
Is it a requirement of Mr. Clark's position as Consul General in New York that he has white Makuba stone floors? Is that a requirement?
That's not.
I'm just curious.
It's not a Treasury Board requirement.
Okay. A stunning powder room finished in jewel onyx. Another requirement of Consul General?
Of the Treasury Board Secretariat, that would not be a requirement in our policy.
Custom smoke gray oak floors in a parquet pattern. Would that be a requirement, Mr. Clark?
So I think all my answers to your questions will be yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how Brock can do this with a straight face.
He's got experience. I mean, can you imagine what ridiculous things he's had to ask witnesses on this stand?
I bet he was hoping to go through all of them. But come on, Brock. Golf simulator. Is a golf simulator requirement?
That, to be fair, though, that's not in the suite. That's in the building.
But it's still a function of the building.
It is a function of the building. That's an amenity.
The condo includes 3 bedrooms, a study, 4.5 bedrooms, including one, this is the master bathroom, clad in Italian white Venato marble and featuring a freestanding copper soaking tub handcrafted by William Holland and custom bronze fixtures by P.E. Guerin. Now again, I'll ask the same question that you can't answer, whether or not that's Mr. Clark's requirements or Consul General's requirements. But you talk about this being an investment. Low cost is not always the best value. There are starving Canadians who are relying on food banks who would love to have a real property investment in New York with these type of features. Do you see the disconnect between what the government is doing and the reality on the Canadian streets? You see that distinction?
So I totally appreciate your
Okay.
comments. And
I go further. The amenities include a 25-meter, 2-lane swimming pool with private cabanas, a separate sauna and treatment rooms, a fitness center, a residence lounge, and access to a paddle court, a golf simulator. I'd love to have a golf simulator sitting in my basement.
Oh,
Wouldn't we all?
and back to the his and her salons, I think there is literally an actual salon for the women and a salon for the men.
So like somebody can come in and do your hair and makeup for you.
Well, you go down there and
Oh, I see. It's an amenity. It's not part
Correct.
of it's not part of the suite itself.
Correct.
Okay, that makes more sense now.
correct. So $5 the $5 super chat. Do you know Makuba? Oh no. Oh, I thought you were actually taking something out of the movie The Labyrinth. Do you know Makuba? Voodoo. Grandfather was a priest in Trinidad. Tell me that reference. That one I don't know. But I thought you were actually referencing the Power of the Babe song that came from The Labyrinth. Anyway, off we go.
But I'm not Justin Trudeau's friends. So friends of Justin Trudeau get to explore these wonderful, wealthy amenities while the rest of us Canadians have to struggle. Do you see the problem that the Government of Canada has with respect to this purchase? The optics are very, very poor. And I know you talk about a threshold of up to $10 million, but you didn't have to buy right at the foot of Central Park. Manhattan is a big island. Why does the Council General require that proximity to Central Park? Why does he have to have all of these luxury amenities?
Because he's JT's
While the
friend.
rest of us suffer in this country. Why?
so I think a good response to get to response to your question.
There is no good response to this, Samantha. Let's just lay that out right now.
Tread carefully. You're talking to the Brockinator.
Yeah, I don't know if you've watched Committee, but you know what? Go ahead. Give me your response. Go ahead. Let's just see what happens.
And I think it's alluded to in the package that was submitted to this committee, is the mission requirements are established by Global Affairs under their property management manual. So I think when Global Affairs officials are here, they should be able to walk through
Those discussions.
how they
This
set
is
out
gonna be
those
fire
requirements
tomorrow,
for an
folks.
official residence.
Canadians deserve an answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Baines, please go ahead.
Oh, we are not going to be listening to Baines.
Oh,
that's for sure.
thank you.
But yeah, so Global Affairs Canada is going to be in committee tomorrow, folks.
Oh, I can't wait for Brock to eviscerate them.
There may not be much left of Global Affairs Canada after tomorrow.
Oh, man.
Wow. All right, let's get by Mr. Baines.
Department. So the requirements around the need for an official residence and what those specifications look like would be set by Global Affairs. They have that authority pursuant to the departmental legislation, so that's the first. And then there are requirements around ensuring that the real property supports broader government priorities. That would include greening, that would include accessibility. So those factors should come into play in that business case that Global Affairs would have undertaken to support the transaction.
Thank you very
And
much.
is that-
I'm sorry, that is past our time, Mr. Baines. We'll now go to Mr. Genuis. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My key initial question here is the why. Because all in a fairly short space of time, in about a 2-year period, the Government of Canada made 3 distinct moves. First, they raised the limit on the value of property that one department could purchase on their own authority. They raised it from $4 million to $10 million. That reduced accountability and oversight. Then they appointed Tom Clark, appointed by the Prime Minister to be the Consul General in New York. And then immediately with this new hyper well-connected person in as Consul General, it became a Government of Canada priority to purchase a new residence. So you have these 3 things happening in close succession, and it seems to me that the timing is highly suspicious. There was no indication prior to Mr. Tom Clark getting this appointment that there was a lot of discussion around a need for a new residence, and yet immediately he takes this position, and all of a sudden Global Affairs is talking about the need for a brand new, what turned out to be luxury residence for the brand new, politically well-connected Consul General. So to the officials. Do you know, or at least officially, who it was that started the conversation about the alleged need for a new residence? Who was it that said, "Hey, we should get a new residence in New York"?
So I know why he's asking this question, and it's just to get it out there. But none of these people are going to know the answer to this. This is going to be well, you'll have to talk to Global Affairs tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's doing this to just get the question out there, so that Canadians know that they're trying to find it. That's the whole purpose of the question here.
So I'll answer for Treasury Board Secretariat. Those decisions occurred under GAC's authority, so we don't have a line of sight as to what precipitated the purchase. The only information I can refer to is what was provided to this committee, which they talked about.
But it was initiated within the department.
Correct.
It wasn't the PSPC or Treasury Board or any other department saying, hey, by the way, looks like we might need this. It was Tom Clark, new Consul General, comes in close to the Prime Minister, and then Global Affairs is on their own authority initiating this conversation about a new residence.
So I would answer that any decisions on this matter would have occurred within Global Affairs.
Yeah.
Okay. For the chief appraiser, I want to clarify on the asking price versus the appraised value of the previous property. It was implied by some of my Liberal colleagues that the appraised value was the same as the asking price. Could you just very clearly clarify, is the asking price the same as the appraised value of the property?
Merci pour la question. En fait,
Thank you for that question.
This is the chief
The
appraiser.
property, as described in the appraisal report, has been on the market for a number of months. The price had been adjusted a few times.
Yes, it's a simple question. I'm talking about the previous property, not the newly acquired property, the previous property.
Okay.
Is the asking price the same as the appraised value, or are they different?
comme j'ai précisé tout à l'heure.
As I noted earlier, I cannot go into details about the first appraisal report produced on that property because the property.
That's all I'm looking for. Just the clarification. So anyone who's making public comments about what the value of that property is, politicians or otherwise, isn't doing so on any factual basis. The previous property has not sold yet, correct?
À ma connaissance, elle est toujours à vendre.
To my knowledge, it is still up for sale.
So this is what I was talking about with the CBC. Is they're saying, "Oh, look, it's listed for, I believe it was 14 million," but I mean, like I said, you can list it for anything you want.
Well, and this actually explains a lot because near the end, they start asking for the appraisal of a property. And again, because I didn't really watch committee, I was just looking for stuff to cut out. There's this argument that, or not argument, it's just a discussion as to how that's going to be provided, and they didn't want to provide it publicly because they were afraid that that could impact the negotiations on the sale of the property. So now that makes a lot of sense, where they don't want to provide publicly what the appraised value of this is, because if they say, well, it's $3 million, yet they're trying to sell it for $14 million, and then some schmuck is going to come and buy it for $10 million.
Yeah.
But if they see that the appraised value is $3 million, they're not going to pay anywhere near that.
And it's actually $13 million. I'm going to drop the link to the CBC article stating that in the chat. And again, I find it a little too convenient that it's the CBC reporting this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there is a lot of misinformation being pushed on this, particularly by supporters of the government. Based on our own research, we've seen that properties in the same building have sold substantially under asking price, or have even been taken off the market once put on. So I think that's important for the community to note. Who decided on the asking price? Was that you? Was that within Global Affairs? Who decided the asking price for that previous property?
As noted in Mr. Quinlan's opening remarks, one of the foundations of the process and the...
J'y arrive.
I'm getting there. I can say that the decision was not made by the chief appraiser. Our job is to provide an appraisal for a given...
La décision de fixer le...
The decision to set the asking price. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Dans ce cas précis...
In this precise case, I would suggest that you ask that question to Global Affairs Canada.
Okay, so this is the problem, right? The government wants to trumpet the asking price as if it means something.
Mr.
But
Generous.
you're the appraiser who appraised it, and that's completely separate. We don't even know who said in the asking.
He's just going to keep going until he stops.
Yeah, we are out of time. Although, Ms. Bouchard, a very clear question was asked to you. If you do not know who set the price, please just say, I do not know. But if you do know who set the price, as Mr. Generous was asking, I would ask you to present that answer to us.
Good catch,
Je ne
Macaulay.
sais pas qui a fixé le prix.
I do not know who set the asking price, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Van Bynen, welcome to OGO. You've got 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a 30-year banker, I think what's important throughout all of this is to ensure that the taxpayers have received a real value in the transaction. So my first question then is to Mr. Quinlan. Can you explain the role of the chief appraiser plays in the Treasury Board's Secretariat's directive on the management of real property?
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc,
Yes, thank you, Chair. In the context of the transaction in question, given that the value is above $500,000, the Treasury Board directive states that custodian departments are required to seek an appraisal. It is in that context that our department played our role.
Thank you. And in this situation, how was the third-party appraiser chosen, and what are the prerequisite needs to be met in order for an approved third-party appraiser to act on behalf of the Government of Canada?
I am not reading these questions off of a piece of paper at all, and I just want everybody to understand that.
This guy's liberal, by the way.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And I think I'm going to skip him.
Please do.
Back to Vignola.
The Treasury Board Secretariat's policy.
Okay, then coming back to the directive on management of real...
Sorry, Mr. Van Bynen, that is our 5 minutes, I'm afraid. Ms. Vignola for 5 minutes, and then we'll go over to Mr. Bachrach for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mrs. Vignola.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Ms. Tattersall, in any discussion about renovating an apartment or property, it is necessary to Well, I imagine that throughout the world, Canada owns about several hundred properties, and in any discussion about renovations, are there cost limits above which authority must be sought? I'm going to answer in English.
No, transactions are only related to acquisition and disposition. However, if there was a major renovation project and the project exceeded their capacity, it could come to the board. So it's a different, in project management, it's not a dollar limit. It's based on an assessment of the department's risk and capacity, and then the risk and capacity of the project.
OK. Est-ce qu'il y a, à votre connaissance,
to your knowledge, and perhaps Global Affairs would be a better place to answer this, but perhaps Mr. Quinlan has the answer as well, so I will give him the opportunity to respond. To your knowledge, are there any difficulties associated with trade agreements like that we have with the United States, which would have an impact on the cost of renovations for residences in New York or, for example, Washington? Under our diplomatic trade agreements with the United States, do we have any obligations that would drive up renovation costs? As you noted, I think this question would be better to ask to Global Affairs. Mr. Quinlan, if I understood correctly earlier, and I would appreciate a yes or no answer, PSPC is in charge of the government's real property in Canada, but not real property abroad. Mr. Chair, I would like to provide a short answer. Unfortunately, the question requires a more fulsome answer. I will still endeavor to be brief. PSPC is in charge of roughly 25% of the built space held by the government in Canada. There are other custodian departments that own properties. For example, Correctional Services Canada and the Department of National Defense. PSPC is mostly in charge of office space, as well as certain infrastructure facilities like bridges and dams. But you're only responsible for property within Canada, not abroad? Exactly, Mr. Chair.
Okay, why would he feel the need to answer that way? It was a yes or no question. Maybe. Maybe he's feeling very uncomfortable in this committee, which, you know, if you're in that position, you know, why would you not be? I just think it's very weird. Like her answer was, does PSPC, you know, only manage properly in Canada and not abroad? Well, you know, it's a more complicated answer. Blah, they manage, you know, and it's also interesting.
But to summarize, yes.
Yeah, to summarize, yes. But he said this a couple times, and I picked up on it the first time too. It's very strange that he says, well, PSPC manages 25% of all office built, or of all built space, not number of properties. I find that very interesting, because that definitely inflates potentially the percentage of PSPC. So does that mean that he doesn't want committee, or he doesn't want Canadians to know at large that PSPC, Public Service Procurement Canada, actually manages a very small number of properties versus, say, Global Affairs Canada? It's strange the way they're framing these answers, because it's unclear, and it doesn't give you a point of reference. So it's very strange.
Merci.
Thank you. Regarding properties outside of Canada, would those be held by Global Affairs solely, or are there other departments holding property abroad? There are 28 custodian departments throughout the government.
But Global Affairs also plays a common service provider role to other departments that have a presence internationally.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Et lorsque vient...
Thank you. When it is time to manage renovations of the real estate portfolio abroad, are renovations carried under the responsibility of one department, or does every custodian department look after the maintenance, renovation, and sale of their own portfolio? Every custodian department is in charge of their own portfolio. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Mr. Bachrach, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll start. Let me just remove the pin here. There we go. I'll start with a question for Ms. Bouchard. It was mentioned earlier that these properties aren't only, they're not only expenditures, they're also investments. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the real estate trends in the area in which Global Affairs has purchased this apartment. What we're seeing in Manhattan and specifically the neighborhood where this apartment is located, Billionaires Row, the vacancy rate in the building versus vacancy rates in the nearby area. Are those things that you would have looked at as part of the appraisal? And can you provide a bit of context in terms of the value of this particular apartment now and in the future?
And just to make sure everybody knows, so the old property that's still there is at 111 East 45th Street, and that is a big building. So it's not like a standalone residence. It's also part of a large building. It's on, but it's at Park Avenue. So obviously when they first purchased this, it was, we want to be on Park Avenue because that's where that's where the Monopoly game is. And now everything is over on Billionaires Row. So we gotta go over there. We want to be swanky. And I also find this interesting that it seemed to be a priority to get this done right before the US election.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't considered, actually. I was thinking more like they want to do it now before we go to election, but we've still got some time. But yeah, US election's coming up, isn't it?
Well, because Pierre is already committed to firing Tony Clark. He's already committed to it. So it doesn't really do any good. The challenge for Pierre is now going to be, what do you do with this property now?
Well, can you sell it? Because if he sells it at a loss, that's a problem for Canadians, right?
Correct.
So can you sell it at a profit? Can you keep it? Can you...
What else do you do?
I don't know. Can you rent it? Like, who knows?
That's the problem. So, but just want to make sure that everybody understands that like this wasn't... They're not selling some swanky Taj Mahal type of property. It's another condo for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Donc, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to read the appraisal report. I understand that it's quite long, but it contains a great deal of information. Of course, the Chief Appraiser of Canada cannot be an expert in the real estate trends all around the world. This is why we bring in local independent expertise to help us understand the value of an asset that requires an appraisal. The data that I have on Manhattan, and specifically the neighborhood where the unit in question is located can be found in the appraisal report. I have not sought out a second opinion on the real estate trends in that market. My understanding, based on the market analysis carried out by the independent evaluator
That wasn't us
that we
coughing,
brought
by the
in.
way. That was other people in the translator room.
Well, it goes from the general to the particular. First, there's an analysis of real estate in New York State, then in New York City, then in each of the 5 boroughs. So we focus then on Manhattan, and within Manhattan on 2 neighborhoods, Central Park South Residential, so the neighborhood bordering Central Park to the south, where the unit under question is located, and an analysis of the Central Midtown neighborhood. Because certain comparable units were sold in that neighborhood. Like you, I was able to read the analysis carried out by the independent evaluator. There we see that sources of information were used, which are commonly used when compiling such statistics. There was a socioeconomic analysis carried out on the occupants of these neighborhoods.
Backrack is letting her take up all his time.
We also look at the volume and scale of transactions carried out, which we discount to present value. We look at recent years and we carry out projections for future years. What we see is is that the market seems to be behaving differently for condos versus co-ops. As such, analyses were carried out for each of these segments of the market individually. You can see certain similarities to Canadian real estate trends. We are subjected to the same socioeconomic phenomena as those seen in the United States. In Manhattan and in the neighborhood, there's not set to be a major increase in population, maybe something minor over the next 5 years. Also in the report, well, I don't believe we have anything on vacancy rates.
OK, désolé.
Sorry, I'll stop there. That's the info I have on the market. It's the same information as you have in the appraisal report.
Thanks. Mrs. Block.
Yeah, all the time.
Thank you, Chair. I have 5 minutes. I'll keep my questions pretty tight because I do want to share my time with my colleague, Mr. Genuis. Prior to 2019, how many purchases over $4 million were referred to Treasury Board Secretariat by Global Affairs Canada?
A follow-up question in writing. I don't
Okay,
have that answer.
you'll provide that to us?
She doesn't know.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Between 2019 and 2022, how many requests were received by Global Affairs Canada to Treasury Board Secretariat over $4 million before the policy changed?
So any sort of how many transactions exceeded their limits, I'd have to come back with an answer.
So in essence, a policy was changed in 2022, but you don't have the numbers to give us to demonstrate perhaps why the limit had to increase from 4 million to 10 million.
So 2 separate things. The transaction limits are reviewed on a regular basis.
Right.
And then the policy was updated. Those two weren't tied. You're asking for specific how many transactions exceeded those limits. I don't have that information with me here today.
So you're saying the raise in the limit was not tied to the number of requests TBS would have been receiving over that $4 million threshold?
So the business case would have been related to not just the transactions, but also a market analysis, a look at the increased inflation. It also was substantiated by a review by Global Affairs of 23 markets and what the average price of acquisition was for it.
So I guess the question is so the market analysis that they were doing to put together this business case. So what she's essentially saying is that Global Affairs Canada said, you know what? We haven't needed to raise this at all since 2006, but this is the year. This is the year that we need to do it. And so we're going to look at inflation. We're going to look at, the market analysis. What market analysis should we look at, Bill? Well, Jim, let's look at what the real estate market is doing in Manhattan, specifically around Billionaires Row. And let's see, and I'm just being facetious here, but it's very strange that prior to that, they haven't needed to raise this at all. And this goes to Kelly Block's questions. Because if they are saying that, listen, more than half of the requests or more than half of the purchases that we were making, say between 2015 and 2022, were over the $4 million limit, then you can attribute some justification to them saying, of course, we need to raise the limit.
Right, but if they're not going over the limit, maybe if there's only a couple,
then there's no reason.
Well, and if they're only going over the limit by like $500,000, then why do you need to raise it to $10 million?
And
that's a huge jump.
Right, because that's the next follow-up question. Well, over half of them were going over $4 million. Okay.
So what was the threshold? Oh, well, none of them passed $6 million. Okay, then why do you need to raise it to 10?
Right. And that's the question. And it's not that, you can't make a purchase if it has to go to Treasury Board. But
it's just Treasury Board has to scrutinize it.
And it has oversight. So it's very, very sketchy. And the Conservatives obviously think this is very sketchy in the timing of it as well.
Wait. We have Jelly Beans with a $2 super chat. It says, it's the Taj Mahal of condos. And Gord Brown suggests we rent it to Randy.
Which Randy, though?
The other Randy. Or the other Randy.
Randy?
You've been talking to Randy?
Okay, thank you for that. Many times you've indicated that TBS did not or does not have eyes on the real property purchases under the threshold of $10 million, and that Global Affairs actually has to be able to demonstrate due diligence in following the framework that has been given to them for the purchasing of real property. Who do they demonstrate that due diligence to?
Excellent question, Kelly. This is the whole thing.
I love Kelly Block. We had the opportunity to meet her, and she's a fantastic lady. And, she's very kind, but, don't piss her off. She's here to work for Canadians, and she's going to work for Canadians.
But she is sharp, man.
Yeah.
She is really, really sharp. When you come across her, she's just like this really nice lady, very, kind of quiet,
kind,
very kind. But when it's down to business, look at her. She means business. And this is the question, right? Okay, so you're saying that they have to, you've implemented these policies and they have to demonstrate that they're... The question is, well, if you're not providing any oversight to them at all, and if you've raised this limit so high that they actually never have to send anything your way, then...
What's the point?
Well, but who's actually monitoring to make sure that they're following these directives?
Well, there's no oversight. Trudeau promised that this would be the most transparent government ever, and all we're seeing is them just not taking accountability and just wasting Canadians' taxpayer money. It's just a whole mess.
And so this is the question. She's asking spot on questions.
So within a department, accountability rests at the deputy head. And
At the deputy minister level?
So the deputy head, yep. And the deputy head under the current policy will appoint a senior designated official responsible for real property. And they will set out their real property management framework. So when GAC is here, they could outline what their framework is and their delegations and their governance.
But they basically demonstrate due diligence to themselves. Nobody else has any role to play in actually assuring that Global Affairs Canada is following due diligence.
So part of the external element is the appraisal that is provided by an external party.
Thank you.
No.
An appraisal is not oversight. We discussed this right at the beginning.
Right.
An appraisal is, okay, this property, it's listed for 10 million, it's actually worth 9. Okay, that's an appraisal. An oversight is somebody going, maybe you shouldn't be buying a $9 million property.
Right, and they were very clear on that. The appraiser's like, I make no decisions and I make no recommendations. So
big difference.
No. And you're not going to tell me that the appraiser does, files a report with anybody that says, well, I appraised it at this and they set the price at this and this is what it sold at. Or this is what they bought at. Because you didn't say that. So, no. Absolutely not. There was one more thing I was going to say, but it's
gone.
It's gone into Randyland.
It's off to Mendocino Island.
It's off to Randy Boysono Island. Well, maybe it'll come back.
Thank you. I'll turn my time over.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of cost to taxpayers, it's important to underline that we haven't sold one residence and purchased another. We currently have 2 Consul General's residences in New York, each of which have very substantial carrying costs. Tom Clark was apparently so keen on a new luxury condo that they bought that condo before even listing the existing property with no guarantee that it would sell at an acceptable price. In general, as it relates to the Treasury Board policy, would you say it's a best practice to secure a buyer for the first property before purchasing the second?
Anyone who's ever sold a house will say yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, most people, if you're buying a house, and we're not talking about crazy COVID era, but if you're buying a house, you'll often put in the clause for the new house that you will not buy that new house until you've sold your old house.
Well, that's if you're buying prior to selling. Yeah, for sure. Because you want to know how much money you're going to have in order to buy the new property. So the fact that these guys just went out and bought that just shows the arrogance of, it doesn't really matter.
It's not their money. Why would they care? And that's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem. We have Daniel T with a 279 super chat requesting a meme.
What would you say you do here?
Throw up the Genesis one.
What is it that you do?
Awesome. And then we have Jim Devlin saying, hi, sorry I'm late, MP. Well, welcome, and we're glad you could join us. Unfortunately, it's almost over.
Sorry, everybody, we got to restart the show.
You can catch the replay in the morning.
Alrighty.
So our policy doesn't speak to sequencing. Our policy speaks to making decisions based on the full life cycle costs. So the sequencing and how that is determined would be set out within the department.
Okay, do you think it's common sense that we don't need 2 Consul General's residences in New York, and that you need to make sure that you're going to be able to sell the first at an acceptable price before you purchase the second, and also that you don't want to be responsible for very significant carrying costs for 2 properties on an ongoing basis? Would that seem to you like common sense?
I would say from how I'm managing my real property portfolio, I would want to understand their sequencing that they've taken and if they've included those costs into their life cycle cost analysis.
Oh, come on, Samantha. This is the whole problem with this garbage code of conduct that the government has and their loyalty to the minister, because you have people coming in to committee that if she were to agree with Garnet Jennis, someone could put forward that Samantha wasn't being loyal to her minister, because she would actually be agreeing with the opposition party in essentially impeaching the conduct of a department.
This is why we need whistleblower laws.
Well, we allegedly do.
Better ones.
We allegedly do, but this is the thing. It prohibits, or at least impedes, public servants from being able to tell the truth because they're afraid they're going to get fired.
Yeah.
This is the problem. Because 100% she should say, yes, that makes sense to me. That would be fiscally responsible and taking great care in understanding how we spend taxpayer money.
Because, but these guys have no regard for taxpayer money.
No, because they don't give a crap.
No, it's not their money.
Right, but just from a common sense perspective, though, I mean, most people that are pinching their pennies, we're going through a cost of living crisis. Many Canadians can't afford homes at all, but most people don't go out and purchase the second home before they've begun the process of selling their first home, because they don't want to be on the hook for the costs associated with owning two homes at once over a long period of time. And again, this first property wasn't even listed until last week, essentially immediately before these committees were starting. Shouldn't the government of Canada apply these common sense, real world insights to their decisions around real property?
And the answer is yes. And Julie Beans with a $5 super chat says the same. Usually the sale of a previous property is part of the condition of offer to buy the property that one has to put an offer on, as well as other conditions.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
But it's an important point, because that previous property will have monthly maintenance fees,
monthly taxes,
and everything else that goes along with it. So every month they are burning thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in cash to keep that going. Now, let's say that property is as valuable as they say, well, then you can expect the monthly fees to be far higher than the new one, just for the sake of argument. So you're spending maybe $20,000 a month for it to sit empty. Not good use of taxpayer money.
Not at all. It's a waste. You may as well light it on fire.
I think I would want to understand from GAC officials when they started the process to ready the property for disposition and how that figured into their strategy around the replacement of the official residence.
Thank you very much. All the way from sunny Windsor, Mr. Kuzmierchuk.
Oh, we're not listening to him. Not this late.
Is a feasibility study mandatory for the repair, renovation, or purchase of a diplomatic or official residence pursuant to Government of Canada policies?
I think that's going to be a yes.
You're testing me, but I would say if you're making a renovation, you would undertake an analysis, like it would be a project. So you would do the normal pre-project definition options analysis before you would get into the actual implementation.
And here's the interesting thing. Remember, she said that any project related to real estate, that goes through Treasury Board.
Except for buying a $9 million condo.
That's not a project, but if a renovation would be a project, a purchase of a new building is not.
So if he wanted to renovate this old place and make it all fancy with like jeweled sinks or whatever they were saying, it would have to be approved by Treasury Board.
Correct.
So they made their own loophole, is what it seems like anyways.
Yep.
In relation to the existing property owned by the Government of Canada at 550 Park Avenue, before the decision was made to purchase West 57th, was a feasibility study prepared in relation to that transaction?
I don't know the answer to that question. That would be something that GAC officials would be able to answer, what they looked at in terms of the renovation cost.
Can anyone on this panel weigh in on that answer? Anybody? No? Okay.
Bueller?
So in your opinion, Ms. Tattersall, would it be GAC who's responsible for the creation of a feasibility study if one was done pursuant to policy?
So yes, as the real property custodian, they would be responsible for looking at any sort of options analysis before undertaking a renovation.
Thank you. I know that there is a talking point that the purchase of the new property is smaller. It was more economical for the taxpayer, but very, very light in terms of details. I know the current property, the new property, is just under 3,600 square feet. What was the square footage of the property on Park Avenue? Anyone have an answer to that?
I don't know.
Really? Really?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, for this. Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Sorry, Mark. Thank
I'll
you,
defer
Mr.
to my colleague, Director General. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. The subject property at 550 Park Avenue was 3,873 square meters.
3,800.
873.
So the new property is around
Smaller.
200 square feet or square meters less. Would that be your understanding?
Correct.
Okay. That is a very interesting answer because according to GAC, there is an impression they're giving Canadians that this new move represented a saving opportunity of more than $2 million for Canadian taxpayers, that it would also reduce ongoing maintenance costs and property taxes and support future program needs. The new property has a carrying cost per year of $235,896 US, which is probably just under $400,000 Canadian per year. Specifically, taxes, $10,000 US per month. Monthly common charges, just under $9,600 US dollars per month. Does anyone have any information with respect to the taxes and carrying costs on Park Avenue?
Yeah, so the site that we were looking at was not the official site of the building. This is like just one of these like Bob's real estate sites.
But it was pretty close.
It was close.
It was pretty close with the exchange and everything. It was pretty close.
That's insane.
That is insane.
That's a mortgage.
That's like 20 grand a month.
It's disgusting.
That is disgusting.
Well, 20 grand US a month.
Yeah.
40 grand Canadian a month.
Well, it's not quite double, but it's a lot of dough.
No, he's saying it's $400K a year.
Anyone?
I don't have access to those. I don't think PSPC would either, but I would expect that when they did their life cycle cost analysis, that the operating costs of both properties would have been taken into consideration.
The annual cost for this new property is more, and we just heard one of our colleagues from Fredericton, New Brunswick, is more than the actual purchase price of properties in her hometown.
Oops.
Do you not think this is a real problem with the government of Canada, that the taxpayers, we are paying out over $400,000 Canadian per year just to allow Justin Trudeau's buddy to live in luxury in Manhattan?
Thanks, Jenna.
Should have kept your mouth shut, Jenica.
Oh, Jenica. Sorry.
Jenica Atwin, yeah.
I always confuse her with the other one. Jenna, what was her name? It's not important. She's somewhere in Ottawa, though.
Just unreal. Unreal. These numbers. Pearl Fauser, my apologies, with a $10 super chat. The scandals are endless. I can't wait to get to an election. You and everybody both. And Gokodani with 5 gifted Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much, sir. Jelly Beans with a $2 super chat. GAC got a lot of rot in it.
Yeah, they sure do.
We're going to see what happens tomorrow.
Is that acceptable to you as a taxpayer? Not only are you civil servants, you're taxpayers. Is that acceptable to you?
So again, what I would say is that the official residence is acquired to support a mission in New York. So the requirements for that would be established by GAC pursuant to their legislation. So they acquire that to achieve their mission results in New York. So I don't have anything further than I can
Sky's
say
the
to
limit,
that.
I guess, so long as it meets the mission's needs. That's what I'm hearing as a taxpayer. So
No.
long as it meets the mission needs,
It
the
is-
cost be damned.
So consistent with Treasury Board policy, it is a balance. Best value is a balance between the real property meeting the operational requirements with the cost of the acquisition
That's
and
not
the
what you said
maintenance
10
over
seconds
the
ago.
life cycle of the asset.
Thank you very
Those
much.
are the questions I have. Thank you.
That's not what you said 10 seconds ago. So where does this leave? So after that, 45 minutes is spent talking about what is the appraisal of the old residence. And they don't want to send it electronically because they're worried someone's going to leak it. And
yeah, because they're trying to swindle whoever's going to buy the place, right?
Well,
I mean, CBC is so proud to announce that they're trying to sell it for $13 million.
here's the problem. And this is where the narrative falls to pieces. The justification is that, hey, the old property, it's too old. It's way too old. And it would cost more to refurbish the thing than would actually be available, for a property on the market. So we're saving money. We're saving money for Canadians.
Oh, and that's the whole theme of that CBC article. I threw it in the chat and I'll throw it in the description after we're done. So take a look. It's like, oh, we're saving Canadians money.
But here's the thing. If that was the case, how are you selling the old property for allegedly $5 million more? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I know it's Park Avenue, but if you're they're trying to imply that it's a dump.
Yeah, it's so bad that he can't live there, yet we're selling it for $5 million more. Allegedly.
So.
Or $4 million more.
Now, was that was that 14 million US or was that 14
million
million Canadian?
It was 13 million. I had made the mistake initially saying.
But was that US or Canadian?
13 million. I'm assuming Canadian because it was written in a CBC article. If you give me 2 seconds, I can pull it up.
But holy moly!
And I'll toss it in the chat again for everybody, just so you guys can see what we're talking about.
And that's almost a 30%.
Yeah, here's the headline. As soon as this eye gets out of my way. Canada lists old NYC residence for $13 million, surpassing cost of new luxury condo. Sale expected to exceed the purchase of its new $9 million Manhattan condo. Like, tell me that's not a spin.
Well done, propaganda machine.
Like,
well done.
It doesn't state whether it's Canadian or American, but I'm going to assume that it's Canadian.
Well, anyway, folks, it's pretty crazy, and we could speculate all night. Trish Pearl with a $2 super chat. You're making me old. I was born in 1961. Well, apparently you're not as old and decrepit as this old residence, Trish, that they felt they needed to sell. But anyhow.
And Goku Dani with the $10 super chat. It says, this is worse than quote unquote wetting my leg and telling me it's raining. They're using our cash as toilet paper and they have no shame in wagging that fact in real time. Zero shame.
And there it is. So, So there's not much else we can probably get into tonight because Global Affairs Canada is going to be at committee tomorrow, and based on how the Conservatives were going after Treasury Board, who wasn't really responsible for this file, it's going to be real interesting to see how they actually go back after Global Affairs Canada tomorrow. So
yeah, because these are the guys that approved all this, right?
yeah, so Tiny's probably not going to be too thrilled about this, but that means we're going to have a live stream tomorrow night as well.
It's not that I don't want to hang out with you guys. It's just
it's
that,
tiring. It's very tiring.
Yeah, and Wednesdays are therapy nights for our son, so it's
a long
always
day.
Yeah, it's quite a long day on a Wednesday. But we are looking forward to watching Mr. Brock absolutely shred Gak.
It sounds like this is going to be the equivalent of GC Strategies walking in. So it will be very interesting, but even if we don't get a lot more answers, what we will get is a little bit of satisfaction to seeing these bureaucrats squirm in their chairs when facing down Larry Brock and the rest of the Conservatives. So that's where we'll leave it. Look for the live stream to go up probably sometime tomorrow afternoon. But
are we going to start it at 9 or 9:30?
It depends on how long it goes. If
9:30 is usually better for us, just because our son is definitely asleep. But if it's long, we'll start it at 9:30. So make sure you check. If it's long, we'll start at 9. Pardon me. So make sure you check the community section, and we will definitely let you know if it's going to be a 9 or a 9:30 start.
So that's it for us tonight, folks. This seems to be our teaser for what's coming up tomorrow. So everyone have a good night, and we will be back with another committee live stream tomorrow at around 9 or 9:30. Check the listing as we put it up. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.